Oh, yes, we have met before because we didn't go to FSB. Yes. So I talked to our speakers before. Hi, Carmen. I'm Stefan. Nice to meet you.
You want your polling questions at the end, right?
What do you want? You don't know if you want to.
No, I will do the formal session, but where do you want your polling questions at the end?
After the first round.
Okay, so
After the first round.
we need to decide on the time correctly.
Could you tell us when you can
After the first round.
So when the last meeting finishes,
When Stefan finishes,
Yeah.
I make a smaller half.
Please answer.
good.
That would be the Q&A then.
No, that's going to be the poll.
Okay, the poll. So all three questions. The one you gave me this morning. No.
No, the one.
You want to do the one from the audience?
One that what time is that?
No, Stephanos is talking about the Q&A with the 12 participants.
No, we're not talking about the Q&A. We want to see their questions, the audience. When do you want to see the voting? This one. No, but I'm doing the formal session. High level time. These are questions from high level. This week we have two, right? In the beginning.
So the question for my session is at the end.
At the end. After the Q&A or before the Q&A?
After the
What are the questions?
No, there are two questions.
Up to you.
They questions that were not multiple choice or yes or no. I asked Hassan to
So I take out the one that you said.
you take that.
Okay. Up to you when you want to do the question
At
from
the
the
end.
participant.
When you want to do the audience, you say, please show the intent.
I'm telling you from now, but then do this after Stefan is speaking.
Okay, so
Stefan is the last
Stefan,
speaker. After this,
Q&A, and poll. Perfect. Thank you.
Maybe he has time to ask another question.
I don't mind, yeah.
So shall we start?
let's start.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, please take your seats. Please bring out your mobile phones. I think now the technology is working. We will ask you to please give your opinion on the two questions that we had in the last session from the high-level plenary. Are you ready? Can you show the questions? Oh, somebody already voted. Please try to vote now. The question is, what is the most successful policy measure for developing green industries? Please choose only one option. You have 10 seconds to make your choice. Please make your choice. One choice for this question. If you have done the first question, please go on to the second question. But I don't, okay, I see voting now, good. Is coordination between ministries, agencies, and departments a necessary condition for developing green industries? Are you done voting? So let's go back to the first question.
we stay here. On industry.
Ecological simulation, but the other word.
Coordination gets 97%. Coordination is necessary to develop the industries. With that, thank you very much. We will continue in every session. With that, I would like to introduce our new session, which is on resource management and circular economy, and it would be moderated by Mr. Stefanos Fotiou, Director, Environment and Development Division, ESCAP. I leave the panel in his good hands and take my leave. Thank you, Stefanos.
Thank you very much, Nilgun, and welcome all from a very wonderful Thai lunch that we enjoyed. I used to say that the panels after the lunch are the most difficult ones because participants need to stay awake. What's happening after lunch is, you know, blood sugar is going up and inevitably brain wants to sleep. But I think you will not sleep, and actually you will be very active because we have gathered an exceptional panel of experts here, and we will go through a discussion on resource management and circular economy. I think that the experts we have in the panel, they represent hundreds of years of experience, all of them very young though, but they have a combined experience of hundreds of years on issues of green industry, circular economy. So we would like to listen from them how this new paradigm of the circular economy is shaping the new industry. How moving from an approach of a linear economy of the extraction, manufacturing, production, and disposal, we can turn into a new example where the output of one industry will become the input for another one. How we can have a new industrial paradigm where each industry will reduce negative emissions and it will reduce pollution. How we can have an industry that it will manage to be not only compatible with the Sustainable Development Goals, but also contribute to international environmental agreements like the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So to do this, we have gathered, as I said, a lot of experts, and I would like to introduce them. And the way that we will run the session is that I'm going to give a first round to the experts to give us their experience with resource management and circular economy in industry, each one from their perspective. After this, we'll have a Q&A session with questions that they will coming from you, from the audience, through this beautiful Slido application that you can use anytime to send your questions. And then, time permitting, we'll have a final round. In the final round, I will ask experts for 1 minute introductions, and then we'll close with another slide of questions where you will be choosing between some options. So we have in the panel Mr. Harald Friedl, the CEO of Circle Economy. I'm used to the word circular economy, but it's nice to hear also the circle economy. Circle is the perfect geometrical pattern, actually. We have Mr. Zhu Bing, Director of the Institute of Circular Economy in Tsinghua University, which is also a very good collaborator of ESCAP and other UN agencies. We have Ms. Nan Bunichayut, Senior Engineer in the Recycling Industry Innovation Group of the Ministry of Industry in Thailand. Ms. Lakshmi Devathmi, which is also a very good collaborator and friend for many years, and she has been a former chair of the Asia Pacific Roundtable on Sustainable Consumption Production, and now she is serving as senior advisor on industry and international affairs issues in the Ministry of Environment and Forestry in Indonesia. We have Mr. Numpol Limprasert, Sustainable Development Director in the Siam Centum PLC, which is one of the big companies in Thailand. Ms. Maria Chiara Femiano, Program Manager from the delegation of the European Union to Thailand. And last but not least, our host from UNIDO, Mr. Stefan Sikas, Director of the Department of Environment. So I would like now to give the floor to our experts. Please try in 5 to 6 minutes to address the theme of the panel. What are some circular solutions implemented by businesses? What are the opportunities? What is needed to promote more circular solutions? The audience is yours. Stefan, sorry, Harald, would you like to, Stefan was the last thing. Would you like to start with you? Thank you.
Stefanos, thank you very much. We'll try to keep everybody awake here. And it's funny that you address at least me as an expert, because I always feel like a student, certainly when you are covering a topic like the circular economy, that we are talking about a total different way of doing business and how we organize our society. Some people start to talk about circular society and what it means. With my Chinese colleague, we were just discussing what does a harmonious and ecological civilization mean? That's how it's in China framed. So it's a big topic that how we are designing our future together. That's why I started to work on the circular economy. And for this, I left Asia. I was living in Burma, actually, in Myanmar, and here in Thailand until 1.5 years ago, and moved to the Netherlands. And why did I do it? Not because of the weather and not because of the people and the food, because that's all better here. But the Netherlands are the frontrunner, or one of the key frontrunners on the topic of circular economy. It's a whole country that said 3 years ago, in the next 30 years, we want to be fully circular as a country. And I took my family, I found a fantastic job where I could actually practice that. And that's where we live now. And it's very rainy, so it's very difficult sometimes, but the topic of circular economy keeps me going every single day. And why I like to accept this invitation here is I was also working in the industry association in Europe about 10 years ago. And I think the topic of green industry is such an important one that we need to take forward. And the circular economy is a specific approach going beyond sustainability, because we can actually talk to the business community and the government people, cities and civil society. It's an all-encompassing topic, and I think that's why it has gotten a lot of traction. It's very positive. My first slide. Here, this slide you will know in a different way, with different colors. We tried to do an analysis, a quick one, how much are the SDGs related to a circular economy? And when you look at this, the blue, often we only look at sustainable consumption and production, but in reality, a lot of the topics, about 70–75%, are directly, indirectly linked with the topic of circular economy. So it is, how we often say, it's very much a roadmap. It's a plan that you can design around the principles that helps a country to work towards the SDGs, because it's always a question, how do you reach them? The problem at the moment, unfortunately, is that we are moving away from our targets. We're moving away from a sustainable civilization. We have more and more economic problems, civil society, we have more inequality, and also our economic system is not very sound at the moment. We, as an organization called Circular Economy, are working for a low carbon, human-centered, and prosperous society from an approach that is very entrepreneurship driven and innovative. And we do this in about 20 countries at the moment. I want to give you some examples why this is such an exciting topic, because we can talk high level all the time, but in the end of the day it comes back to some very concrete examples. So we are doing work, before going to this slide, we're doing work, for example, with ports. So when you look in Holland, there are two of the biggest ports in Europe is the port of Amsterdam and the port of Rotterdam. And there are many waste streams and actually resource streams flowing through the ports. And at the moment, the ports and the companies don't know, and they haven't linked to each other actually, how could we more intelligently link up these waste streams and collaborate? The circular economy is all about radical collaboration. And so we are going in there in the port and start to do data management with them. We're starting to breaking down silos and looking with the circular economy with a systemic perspective on how you can reduce this and therefore use less resources and have a higher output on the value that you're putting in. We did a project with a big, another example, a project with a big a company that is producing big equipment for hospitals. And in earlier days, what they did, they just sold equipment, and the more they sold, the better it was for them. And we designed with them a kind of a remanufacturing system that was located in the port, where they ended up leasing a lot of their equipment, which comes at more affordable prices for many, also in developing countries, hospitals. And they designed a system that managed to bring back the materials to Europe, and then the old materials became an input into the new material stream. And we're working at the moment in Holland very actively with the textile sector. How can we make the textile sector, which we all know is a very, very dangerous sector in terms of pollutants, how can we make it more circular? And there are many business models around that. You can lease your jeans now. We are looking again with all the recyclers, with the producers, all together at one table on how we can make this happen, because it's a national effort. I want to go briefly into this because we did the first analysis that is Asia relevant with Laos. I have 1 more minute, great. In Laos, when you look at the country, and that's why I think it's a very empowering new paradigm on how to look at a country. I'm an economist myself, but how economics were done until 10 years ago, it's quite stupid, and it actually doesn't represent reality. The country of Laos, for example, was stuck in this famous resource curse. It's not the only country, many countries are, especially the ones that are richer off in terms of resources. But when you look at a systemic perspective and say, what do we actually want to do as a country? In Laos, we sat with them and said, we don't want to sell all our resources because in 20 years they're all gone. How can we economize and improve the value add for our population within the country? 3 very small examples. Instead of cement production, where they have to import a lot of resources, why don't you replace part of the construction with wood that is actually grown in your own country, which is also carbon sink? Number 2, why don't you always produce new motorcycles, but think about a remanufacturing hub for the whole of Southeast Asia, where you can remanufacture and reuse materials. We see examples in Africa. This has created hundreds of thousands of jobs. And so we are looking with these countries on how circular they are now. My own country, Austria, we did a first analysis. It's only 8% circular, meaning more than 9% of the resources are just swiping through the economy and never used. So in short, it's a huge potential. And I want to round it up because the circular economy is an opportunity for you as industrialists, for people who want to create jobs. And that's the last map. I just want to see the visual. We did an analysis with Holland. It's very relevant for your job market. And in the end of the day, I believe a lot of the drive will come from this perspective. And if you look into your eyes as well, it's also relevant for you, your kids, and future generations. Please don't forget it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Harald. And you had so many messages that I can't summarize. You talk about ambition becoming the driver of strategy. You talk about the things that we are moving backwards, actually. But I want to keep something that I subscribe 100% because it happens to be part of what I've studied, that the economics, we know, they don't make sense for the world that we are living. So, and that gives me a good opportunity to hand over to Mr. Zhu Bing, Director of Institute for Circular Economy, which is also a member of the International Resource Panel, and I think he can get us a kind of view of the real world of resource flows. Mr. Bing.
Okay. Working. It's not working. Okay.
One suggestion I have for the conference, please, is that put directly the presentation. The panelists are here, we see them. So just start with the presentations. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Also, many thanks for the kind invitation from UNIDO and the UNESCOP. And good afternoon, everyone. So it's my great pleasure to join our fellow panelists to talk about the resource management and the circular economy. My focus here is about improving China's resource efficiency through sustainable development of industrial parks. And talking about China's resource efficiency, let me how to say, start from the trends of the domestic material consumption and resource productivity in China. So actually from the graph provided by our team, you can see in recent 5 years, China's resource efficiency has increased for more than 20%. However, we have to admit the absolute value of resource product is still far below the developed country. So the main challenge currently facing Chinese society, according to government, is to balance the people's need for increasingly better life and the need for ratifying imbalanced and insufficient economic growth. And the circular economy is a means of not only waste management, but also efficient utilization of resource production, circulation, and consumption. As China is still in the middle age of industrialization, industrial parks are regarded as a very important key to improving resource efficiency. Okay. Here is a Here is a quite interesting survey actually conducted by my team, actually with the support of the central government. So that's for the 2015. So that's about it's about 1,600 national and provincial level parks involved. We provide here about the spatial distribution and the category distribution, also the overview of the economic environment for this surveyed parks, and also we provide the proportion as a percentage of national total. You can see here. So actually about 39% GDP produced in these surveyed parks, and meanwhile about 42% energy consumed in these parks. This is just the surveyed parks, but talking about for the whole country. So actually currently there are more than 2,500 national and provincial parks. And if you count about the municipal and the county level parks, more than 5,000. And according to some statistics, about more than 60% GDP produced there. And meanwhile, of course, these parks are also values with highly concentrated energy and material consumption, and with highly concentrated, generation and discharge of pollutants and greenhouse gas. And actually, in order to promote the green, circular, and low carbon development of industrial park, the different ministry of Chinese government, they have led the 3 different programs here. So I list here. The first is the circular transformation industrial parks. This program, mainly led by NDRC, National Development Reform Commission, started in 2011. Now about 129 national pilots approved. The second, I think many of you should be familiar with, National Eco-Industrial Parks Demonstration Program, mainly led by the Ministry of the Environment. And the third is the National Low Carbon Industrial Park Pilots, mainly led by the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology. So actually among these 3 programs, here I just want to highlight the one more related to today's topic we call the CTIP, Circular Transformation Program. So actually the basic idea is just to follow the circular economy principle, to reform the existing program, the existing parks, for example, spatial, for the industrial chain, industrial structure. I go to the details. The final slide here I would like to use is actually to give just one example about the CTIP. This is about the circular transformation program for the industrial parks, how the implementation plan of industrial parks is developed, is for the city to be developed. And first of all, I would like to highlight, so for every park, so its own character and the material flow analysis is required. On the basis of this, so to determine the object, on the basis of the object, to determine the approach for the 7 different tasks, and then I don't go to details. And also, I would say on the basis of this, the case supporting projects and safeguarding measures adopted. The reason I put the final slide here to conclude is I would like to highlight the following points. First, the circular solution is a systematic and comprehensive approach. The second, design and planning are very important. As for the city program, the circular economy principle and the material flow analysis is particularly important for the design planning. Finally, I mean, in the implementation of city program, I mean, both of the supporting project and the institutional safeguarding measures are equally important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Big, and thank you for highlighting the importance of the circular economy and highlighting how important it is actually to work with the existing industrial infrastructure, because there's a lot of new industry and we have opportunities to make it green, but there's a very big volume of existing infrastructure that it's actually determining the level of sustainability and the level of compliance of the industry with climate change and other environmental parameters that needs to be also fixed. So we go to a practitioner now, Ms. Buniachut, from the Recycling Industry Innovation Group, that she will share her experience on work they do in this industry.
Thank you, Dr. Stefanos. Good afternoon, everyone. As Dr. Stefanos has kindly introduced me, actually I am working for the Recycling Industry Innovation Group, which is under the Department of Primary Industries and Mines, Ministry of Industry, Thailand. And of course, from the name of our department, I guess you can tell that our work actually responsible for the mining sector as well as other related upstream industries such as steel industry and metal industries. And of course, around a century that our department look over this mining sector, supplying raw materials into the industry. Our natural resources, especially ore, has depleted significantly. And as you might know, Thailand is not a country that has abundance of ores like China or other countries like in Africa. So we see some difficulty in this sector. And probably a decade ago, when there comes the terms of urban mining, and that is when our department is trying to explore a new area of works. I forgot to switch my slides, that's why. Okay, there, I'm sorry, thank you. Well, so that's why we start to explore a new area into these urban mining concepts. And of course, we expand our scope of work into the recycling of minerals and metals from waste. And in order to tell that where or which position we're playing in the circular economy, of course, we are at the very end of the circular economy, closing the loop of the linear economy through recycling. And of course, now, even though the concepts of circular economy would like the product to circulate it in the loop as long as possible through reuse, repair, and remanufacturing. However, it's unavoidable that it will end up with end-of-life product. And in the end, it will have to go through the process of recycling. So now our main objective of working is trying to maximize the utilization of these materials, both from the primary resources as well as the secondary resources or waste. So One of our main mechanisms of driving towards circular economy is that we establish a recycling technology research and development center. And of course, as you can see, the R&D center, what we do is conducting research and developing some recycling technologies. And from there, actually, thank you. From there, we also, thank you. So we also, after conducting research, of course, we also study about their application is suitable for those to use those secondary raw materials. And of course, we disseminated those knowledge to the industry through the workshops and training, and so on and so forth. We also promote and also, we also provide information as well as technical service and technical solutions to the business as well. And of course, the stakeholders that we have involved with is, of course, is waste generators, waste processors, and of course those what we call the green manufacturers who take those secondary raw materials into the process. And now, I'll give you a little bit of sample of what we did, of what we do actually. Here's the 4 types of waste that we actually focus on. It's actually the materials that contains metals. For example, e-waste and those wastewater sludge that contains, of course, metals. And our main objective, of course, is to recover those valuable materials. For example, like gold, silver, and critical materials out of it, and of course saving them from ending up in the landfill. And well, years passed and around 50 technologies has been developed, and we did it in of course in the lab scale as well as pilot scales. 200 people, of course, mostly from SMEs, has been trained with us, and there are many of them that could be able to further develop our technology, could be able to generate at a higher value added, on approximately around $3 to $4 million per year on average. And of course, now I'll bring you to a kind of a higher level. Actually, on the national level, I could say, well, in terms of circular economy, Thailand actually just started, but and we're trying to kind of grasp the idea and the concept of circular economy. However, if you talk about sustainability or environments, Thailand has working on it for a long time, of course. And most of our works actually encourage and supports circular economy. However, as you might know, many companies will probably feel reluctant to adopt the concept of circular economy into practice without a proper strategical framework or regulatory framework in place. So, of course, our government is trying to set up certain rules and regulatory framework in order to facilitate the implementation of circular economy. And here's on the slide is actually our kind of a draft, a strategic draft that we have in the ministry. And well, as you can see, we have projects, something like Green Industry and Eco-Town and so on and so forth. I wouldn't go down in there. But the last point I would like to mention is that I would like to probably reiterate of what my minister has just said in the morning. He said a lot already. Again, I would like to say that our government, actually my ministry, is preparing a more comprehensive, they will call circular economy roadmap, something like that. And they will, of course, propose to the cabinet, as he mentioned. And of course, once it is officially endorsed, I think it's a very good start where all the government body could be able to move towards the same direction, and of course, towards circular economy more effectively. Well, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Buniyachut. You mentioned at one point that you are working in the end of the cycle on the waste and recycling. But I certainly believe that the work of recycling could become the very beginning of the cycle, because it's actually making the waste to be a resource. And that's a kind of overall message, I think, a lot of organizations, including the United Nations, they try to convene for many years, that we need to look at the waste as an untapped resource and not just something that is undesirable. So I think that the kind of behavior that we had, all of us in industry, in our private lives, is that waste was something that nobody wanted to manage. But I think there's a tremendous opportunity, waste to become something that everybody wants to manage, because it sees the value behind this. So it's time now to move to Ms. Devanthi, which I think can bring another view from someone working on international affairs in these very important issues of circular economy. Ms. Devanthi.
Thank you, Dr. Stefanos. And I also would like to thank the organizer for having me here, so then I be able to share some Indonesian experience. The questions put forward for these plenary sessions are indeed timely important. However, due to the time constraint, let me focus my response and discussion on the question number 2 and 3, if I'm not past. Okay, so resource efficiency and circular economy is indeed among the new approaches that we require for achieving our sustainable development goals. We have heard this morning from the keynote speakers that the circular economy is a model in the context of achieving the SDGs goals as well as the national development goals. So my government is also share the same view in this regard. And it is timely to pursue the development differently, and no longer a time to put efforts in gaining economic growth while putting the environmental goals away. So, and another important principle in this regard is no one left behind, as it's also principle of the SDGs, our goals for 2030. Now allow me to use Indonesian experience in implementing the circular economy as part of its strategy in managing the challenges in our solid waste, especially in urban cities. It's not working. It's not working. Can we help from? Okay, yeah. So Indonesia is shifting its paradigm. So it's shifting from the business as usual type of development into the, we call it a low carbon development strategy, by setting national targets, develop a new policy regulations in order to support our targets. We have various agreed, multilateral agreed targets, our global agreed target. Among others is the Paris Agreement. So as part of the commitment to the Paris Agreement, Indonesia, with its nationally determined contribution, has set, well, it's quite an ambitious target. So we would like to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 by 29%. And waste management or waste sector is part of the is one of the 5 sector priority to reduce the greenhouse gas emission. So we have no choice rather than shifting the paradigm from the business as usual to the new concept. And circular economy and the resource management, it's among the new concept that we are talking now. So of course, it's not easy to change or to shift the paradigms. Many things need to be done, discussion, coordinations, and other need to be taken by not only by the government, but also by other stakeholders at all levels. So for example, we have been shifting our regulations from end of pipe, beginning of pipe, and now circular economy, and you name it. We try all the jargons that we are having in the past including the sustainable consumption and production, which is still valid till now. And we believe that the sustainable production and consumption approach, it's one of the key elements in implementing the resource management and circular economy. So we have a policy measure, we have a target to deal with, to achieve with. For example, we need to reduce or we need to increase percentage of the waste that could be handling by the government. We set a target of percentage, how much waste could need to be reduced by the consumptions of the community. And we also put the target into the actions by trying to implement circular economy. So we have, or we set the 10 years framework for so-called extended producer responsibility, because it's not only the community who need to be changed, but also the producer itself. So we have the EPR, we also have another strategy, and the last strategy that the presidential decree set the strategic national strategic action as well as the roadmap in reducing the resource efficiency and reducing the waste management. So it's another examples. We have quite many piloting project modeling only to exercise our policy regulations. And the last, we believe that in order to deal with environmental challenge, environmental policy alone is not enough. So we need to also develop that other type of policy. Among others is environmental economic policy. So last year we introduced the government regulations, introducing the environmental economic instrument, including the financing the environmental investment and providing type of sets of incentive for those who have a good behavior toward environmental. And only last month, the president issued a new presidential regulation on environmental management fund, because we certainly believe that once people aware about doing the good things, but they also need to be able to afford the actions, technology, and others. So we believe that incentive, including the financial incentive, is needed. So for us, circular economy is not the objective. It's a model to achieve the sustainable development goals, to be able to ensure the win-win-win solution, triple win, win for environment, win for sustainable, and win for economic. And the implementation of circular economy, it's include a shift of paradigm as well as changing of behaviors of stakeholders at all levels. And the last, my last point is to support the implementation of the resource management and circular economy. Indeed, we need to have a kind of integrated and transformational policy and instrument to be also implemented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lakshmi. I hope you allow me to call you Lakshmi, yes. It was a lot of inspiring things in your presentation, because I saw the spirit of Indonesia. I saw Pancasila in your presentation, because you talk about representation, which is one of your principles in Pancasila. You talk about justice. But I also want to keep this need to have a balance between regulations and incentives, and especially regulations that they are based on what you call international agreed commitments. So I think this is a very valuable lesson on how regulation could become useful at the local level, but at the same time contribute to achieve international commitments. We'll move now to Mr. Numpol Limprasert. Kun Numpol, you're coming from one of the biggest industries, corporations in Thailand, and cement industry, which is quite resource intensive. So what are things that your industry is doing on being more circular?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dr. Stefano, and good afternoon, Sawadee Krap. It's my pleasure to sharing about the SDG implementation. About the I will change my topic to sustainable development and circular economy, because it's my position is SD director. So I want to share with you about our concept about the sustainable development. Before that one, I want to tell you that SDG is not the biggest one. It's one big Thailand. And we have the three core business. We have the cement building material, we have the chemical business and packaging business. We have the people, 53,000 people. It means we also have the 50,000 ambassador or circular economy ambassador. And for the SD, I think all of you know about.
Could you take the other microphone better?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, I think all of you in this room know about the SD. I don't want to say what is the meaning of the SD, but for the SDG, we think that for the economy, we want to go in the economy, and at the same time, we also want to make the environment healthy and also happy society. And the keyword for our SD is balance triple bottom line. I think you know about this one. And for this framework, SD framework for the SDG, I think we have something different from the other. You can see the big circle that is the governance. It means every activity and every practice implementation, we need to see, we need to keep the governance in our mindset. And for the circular economy, I don't want to say that what is the circular economy, just make, use, and return. But I want you to see on the circle at the right side of all of you, we call it a circular value chain. We start from the product design, because if we want to use the recycled material, it just put the used material into the process. We need to have some innovation, we need to have some technology, or maybe we need to modify our process. So I want to start with that one. And after that, we will try to find, normally we will use a natural resource. But now we can use a natural resource even for the recycled material. That is resource input. The third one is manufacturing. It means for the SDG factory or plant, we need to have this circular mindset for the operation people. And for the fourth one, after we produce, we need to sell and distribute. And after that, the customer use our product. After use our product, they can return back, or we can recover that one. And for the normal concept of the circular economy, you will think about how to recycle that one. But I want to tell you that in the circular value chain, we can have the small loop of the circular. For example, in our manufacturing state, we can think about how to reduce our resource, how to reduce our energy, how to reduce our water consumption or water withdrawal. I want to say that one. And at the left side, I don't want to explain more, but for the WBCSD or World Business Council for Sustainable Development, they also have the CEO guideline for circular economy. And this 5 business model is come from WBCSD. For example, they have the product as a service. For example, like this room, we use the lamp lighting, but I think the objective, we want the lighting. We don't want the lamp. So the Philip idea is, okay, before they sell the lamp, but now sometimes they sell the lighting, charged by luck or charged by lighting, like that one. And this is our SDG, circular economy strategy. We separate to 3 strategies. First, we say the reduced material use or durability. If we, you can see the example on the right-hand side. If we design or we develop the product that is longer use, we can reduce the resource already. And okay, and sometimes we also design, for example, like the active airflow, because the SD business is concerned with the housing or construction, and the active airflow is how to circulate the conditioning in our house or home. So this one you can use. And the second strategy is upgrade or replacement. Okay, sometimes we design the new material. We can replace that with the old material. Okay, and the third strategy is about the reuse and recycle. This one, I think you know about this one, reuse and recycle. And just for one example, for the I think this one is the good example for the SDG for the packaging. It means the paper packaging. We call it the green carton. Okay, normally I think every business sector try to reduce the cost, and this one we also think about this one. And at first, we try to design the high strength paper. It means if we have the high strength, we use the same usage, so we can reduce the thickness. If we can reduce thickness, it means we can reduce our resource. And sometimes we think about how to adhesive between each layer. That one also make the paper container is more stronger. We do this one, and sometimes we also have the building station to collect back the paper for our recycling material. Okay, just I want to show you one example for this one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lim Prasert, for giving a practical example, and thank you very much for bringing also the concept of the value chain, which is very close to the circular economy. I mean, it's value chain, life cycle analysis that leads actually to actions for green, for circular economy. And I like very much that one of your strategies is to increase the durability of the material, because actually we have a problem, I would say, in our post-industrial society. It's the planned obsolescence that is happening with a lot of devices and a lot of products. So it's quite nice to listen from a company that is investing on more durability and making the products having a much bigger lifespan. So we have listened from practitioners, from scientists, from government. We are moving now to the multilateral and international organizations, and we will start with Ms. Femiano, Program Management in the delegation of the European Union to Thailand. Ms. Femiano, I mean, the circular economy is something quite central in the European Union policies for sustainable development and for environmental protection. So what would you like to share with us today on this experience?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the introduction on the centrality of the circular economy approach in the EU policies. I think the first thing that I would like to say is that exactly this has not to be considered a policy in isolation, but this is very much being embedded in all the union policies that are currently being developed. The backbone of it is the action plan that was adopted in 2015, and if you see on the left of the slide, basically it focuses on all the key elements of the circular economy circle. So there's production, consumption, waste management, and secondary raw materials. And at the core of it, at the center of it, there is innovation and investment to make the circle going and to support the transition to a circular economy. I'm just, in the interest of time, I'm just going to make very brief examples of on all of the 5 areas of action. So on production, for instance, we're working to embed circularity in the design of new products and in the materials that they're made of. On consumption, we want to empower the consumer to make better choices, thoughtful choices by having better eco-labels that are trustworthy. And we're also developing a product environmental footprint for many consumer goods so that the consumer can decide which product to take in a conscious way. On waste management, the EU, the member states, approved in May this year a new set of measures with pretty ambitious goals. So, for instance, by 2035, at least 70% of all packaging waste in each of the EU countries, so this is per country, not an average for the Union, should be recycled. By 2035, we aim to landfill less than 10% of our total municipal waste. On secondary raw material, which is really closing the loop. We are developing standards and regulations to remove existing barriers to trade. And this is really where we're focusing a lot our attention these days. At the center of it, as I mentioned before, there is the financing side, because of course such a transition needs measures that support it. And this doesn't necessarily mean inventing new instruments, but it also means tailoring the ones that we already have to support like a policy that, as I said, is becoming horizontal. So we're using the instrument that we already have, like Horizon 2020 for research, or the investment instrument like the FSI, and also working with the European Investment Bank to create a platform that finds the good projects and make them bankable, and also supports the application of these in our member states. On the right-hand side, you see the priority sector of the action plan. And in the interest of time, I would like to focus on one, which is plastics. We hear a lot about plastics, and sometimes, again, in isolation, sorry. But for us, this is a key element of the European Union circular economy approach, because plastic is really the material that is ubiquitous and is really where we can see how circular economy can be applied and actually work. So here we have a strategy that was endorsed at the beginning of this year, and the vision is basically divided in 4 pillars. So the first one is to improve the economics and the quality of plastic recycling by boosting the market for recycled plastic and setting goal for all plastic packaging to be recyclable by 2030. On consumption, we want to tackle the issue of single-use plastics and microplastics. We also want to create a dedicated research agenda on plastics. So again, financing that is tailored for circular economy, and also specifically in this case for plastic. And fourth, but not least, engaging multilaterally and internationally with like-minded institutions and countries to work together against plastic pollution, marine litter in particular. And here I would like to say this is my role. So the European Union has people around the world that are specifically working on internationalization of the policies, where we find ways for cooperation and to pushing forward the international agenda. A quick one, because we are in an area of the world where this issue is talked a lot about and where there's a lot of action going on, is single-use plastic and fishing gear. There's been a proposal for a directive by the European Commission earlier this year, specifically on that. You see these items on the screen. These are the most found items on European beaches, but if we look at them, they're very much the same ones that we see around. And so different measures for each item will be proposed for taking into consideration consumer behavior and needs, but also the opportunities for businesses to provide alternatives. Last but not least, as we were saying, I mean, our role as European Union is to provide the tools and set up a framework to encourage a shift towards new business models, towards new partnership in our member states. So it's a big effort, and one thing that is important is to engage all stakeholders, which in our case is really stakeholders from 28 member states, maybe 27, but 28 for the moment. And for this, we have created a stakeholder platform where members of businesses, public authorities, civil society organization can access all the information that is there. And if you go there, and I've done it myself, it's incredible the amount of knowledge and the amount of activities and initiatives that are already taking place. And this is so important to help advancing this concept on the ground and to have circular economy really implemented in our on the ground. So I will stop here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Femiano, for highlighting some of the big focus of the strategy, like the plastic. But also thank you very much for saying that actually all this focus of the European Union to circular economy is done through a portfolio of policies on finance, on standards, on regulations. And it was also very important to listen that this kind of portfolio is based on quantitative targets that you have put out there. So I think this is a very good lesson. You also, I think, highlighted that there's not something like one recipe to fit all, and we need to have different kind of selection of tools. And talking about recipe, I can't think something closer to recipe like the resource efficiency and cleaner production program that UNIDO has, together with UNEP. I don't know if, I hope it's still a prominent thing. So what's the UNIDO recipe for circular economy, Stefan?
Thank you very much, Stefanos. It's funny that the panel is actually framed between two Stefans, yes. Also sort of a circle. So a brief look at what is it for developing countries, and we have just heard from the European Union the approach that the very planned and logical approach that the European Union has towards circular economy, which is requiring certain infrastructure, also in terms of administrative means, that might not be available everywhere in developing countries. So let me just race quickly through the circular economy concept that we have seen already. So often we have the cleaner production, that means less resource use, the green products without toxic, long life, recyclable, the extended lifetime, not only through better service, but also remanufacturing, intensified use. There is the collection at the end of life and the separation of waste and the reuse of resources. Now, all of that together brings the circular economy. Why do we do that? First thing is to reduce the environmental footprint. Secondly, to reduce the resource dependency. That is something that in many fora is already getting a little bit more quiet. We want to minimize waste, of course, and last but not least, and I mean that very seriously, we want to generate increased wealth. So that sounds all fine, and we have heard that many times. I wanted to pick out one particular issue, the issue of resource use. And a graphic here shows on the red line on top, shows you the world population growth in billions from the left side to the right. On the bottom you have the years 1970 to 2010. That's a 40-year time span. And you can see that the world population went up from not even 4 billion to something like 7. Now the black line on the very bottom is the world middle class. And essentially for the world middle class is a fair proxy in a way, as you can see from the blue line on the resource use of the world, because with an increasing middle class over proportionally increasing to the increase of the world population, you have an over proportional increase of resources, of resource use. And this is something, the 70 billion tons which are mentioned there, they might not speak to you directly. You might say, those who are familiar with the numbers, they might say that about 25 billion of that is construction material, resource. But I learned a couple of weeks ago that the most, quantity-wise, the most smuggled goods in the wider area here, in which we are geographically, is actually sand. Sand that you would assume is ample in terms of availability, but it's not. It is already a scarce good where it is needed for construction. Even things that we take more than for granted, that we assume is one of the things which will never run out. Whoever would think we are running out of sand? Actually, in some areas we do. So we had the question before, and actually in the discussion before this panel, Stefan was asked, so why is circular economy actually not taking up so much? And one of the things is, one assumption that many people have, environmental pollution can be solved at the end of the pipe by cleaning up things. And I would say this is not correct, not out of our view at UNIDO. We actually believe that it's neither really effective nor very efficient. The circular economy, which prevents pollution early on, in particular through greener design, through better resource use, appears a much better approach than actually cleaning up subsequently. Then a lot of discussions focus on waste treatment. Circular economy, many people seem to think when they're in contact about it, it's about waste treatment. But it's actually much more. Of course, recycling as part of waste is a starting point for circular economy. But things are really getting interesting when industrial development is taken further. There is a lot in recycling industries, but there's also, on top of that, a lot in innovation for better use of resources during the useful product lifetime. And this will be increasingly important. I believe that is a really innovative and large potential of the circular economy lies in the use phase of the products. And of course, there will be therefore a lot of waste reduction from better use. Probably, but that is a very vague forecast, but still, my opinion at least, probably there will be more waste reduction from better use practices than actually from recycling. Now, another assumption that many people have is that there is an increasing demand, for products has only a moderate impact on global resource costs. That refers to the graph that I showed you before. But one has to see that several resources are not only bound to become scarce and costly, but with resource costs, there's always a tipping point. They increase moderately in cost until suddenly at 90%, 95% utilization of resources, they become very costly. And that within a short period of time, which is not a lot of time for the users of the resources to adapt. And this is not unlikely to happen here because resources globally are scarce. If major consuming economies change their internal business model, it has only limited repercussions on developing countries. So why should developing countries actually act? We believe this is not entirely true. One is that delivery into a circular economy market changes the requirements of goods, the standards they apply for, the value that is paid for them, and also the volume of goods traded. Everything will change. Everything will need to adapt. Secondly, and that is true for developing country at least as much as for industrialized. Secondly, there is a big market for secondary raw materials in this emerging circular economy market. And this is a market that developing countries can deliver products into, can deliver secondary resources into. Thirdly, can hardly read my own writing from here.
Two small characters.
Two small characters. I fully agree, Stefanos. You're right. So if you look at the current market sizes, developing countries will largely procure products designed elsewhere for products which will include circular economy principles already in them, easily recyclable, etc., non-poisonous. Why would you not use these characteristics? And finally, last but not least, developing countries are inherently better in resource efficiency. There are so many examples where people understand the value of resources. The recycling rates might be lower, although I'm questioning the numbers, but it's still, there's a lot of knowledge in developing countries about resource efficiency, knowledge that can be used to leapfrog. Finally, people think that other technological changes are independent from circular economy and will not influence the outcome. There is, of course, a point of green design, which is an essential point, an enabler for circular economy. But I would also want to point to Industry 4.0, which will give us an incredible amount about the life and the status of products. And this will massively increase the possibility for repair, remanufacturing, reuse of these products. In the future, we have it already with turbines from, let's say, Rolls-Royce, which inform the manufacturer in which status they are and whether they need maintenance. Tomorrow, it's not unlikely to be the washing machine. Well, not tomorrow, 10 years from now, but still. So, takeaways. So the world is changing again. Please do not miss the opportunity. It is a much more fundamental change than only a gradual, moderately small one in economy. The circular economy is an opportunity for developing and middle-income countries. It brings benefits from the beginning, meaning you can already generate a lot of benefits from waste and economic activity, but it's not limited to that. It is also driven by economic interest, and that is complementing interventions by governments. Governments do not need to deal with the problems alone, and that is a big and very interesting driver. Here at UNIDO, there at UNIDO, everywhere at UNIDO, globally, we are focusing today on cleaner production efforts, particularly through our cleaner production centers, many of which are here in the room. We do so in the next step in Eco-Industrial Park, where we want to use multiple industries to become together jointly better than they are today. We do a lot of work on recycling industry development, in particular in e-waste and in other areas. But we are also, I know Stefanos, we are also undertaking other closely related issues, energy efficiency, energy systems optimization. We are looking into issues of agro-industry and nutrients, and we do trade capacity development. In addition, increasingly, we will work on innovation and business development in the area, and we are also seeking more partnerships, like we are happy here to partner with ASCAP and Stefanos in particular. Final last points. We offer now member states a dialogue forum, and we hope that similar to what the European Union does with their information exchanges through the website, that we will collect and make available more and more information through our direct contacts to member states, through exchanges, to make available to all for common learning and exchange. And, well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Very comprehensive. I want to keep these challenges and these assumptions that you challenge, actually, because I do think that if we want to have a paradigm shift, we really need to challenge a lot of the assumptions of the, what I will call, of the neoclassical model of growth, the neoclassical model of industrial development, the neoclassical model of development. So, we didn't manage to have 30 minutes for Q&A, but we'll have at least 15 to 20. One good innovation we use in this conference is the Slido. So instead of having the awkward moment where no one wants to break the silence from the audience, we have selected questions from the audience. I mean, the audience has already submitted some questions, so I'll go through the questions that they have been submitted. And this is why you see me looking at my mobile phone. I'm not exchanging messages or WhatsApp, but I'm looking at the questions. I will start with the questions that they do go to a specific panelist directly. So I'll ask for for the question to Mr. Friedl, which the question is, where should we start implementing circular economy? Harald.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I want to give you the example of the Netherlands, where a lot has started, but they never did a baseline analysis. So to prioritize your resources, because what we are hearing today is many people work on many topics. And you have a saying, at least in my language, you can be running as fast as possible, but if you don't know where you're running, you're not going to end up at the goal. And I think that's what I would like to give as an answer. If you start with a solid piece of analysis, just looking at the resource streams through your country, for example, or in your industry sector, this is what we're doing very successfully in big stakeholder dialogues, combining the analysis piece with a policy and stakeholder framework. We are prioritizing sectors that have the biggest impact. I think that would be a short answer.
Thank you very much. We have another specific question to Mr. Bing, which is a very interesting one. Mr. Bing, how the parks you presented in China implement the industrial symbiosis concept, which is a very important concept in the intersection, I think, between industry and biology?
Hi, thank you. So this is a very important question. And first I would say, so actually for the eco-industrial program in the world, so this is the industrial, how to say, the symbiosis is very important. So China, I think, in principle, follow the rule. The second I would to highlight, so actually in China, the administrative committee of the park plays a role as a department, a government department, somehow like provides a service provider. So this is a very important point. And the third, I would to mention maybe, if for example, for the program, what I introduced, the circular transformation of industrial parks program, actually according to our summary and observation, currently there are tendency. So something like if you are investor, so if you like go to the China industrial park to invest, please pay great attention about, because government currently they evaluate, for example, the industrial chain or the mending of industrial chain. If you could contribute that, so that will be very important. So I would say, so this is the point I would like to provide. Yeah.
Thank you very much. One more specific question to the panelists is one to Ms. Buniachut, which they're asking, you have presented a number of tools that you have used, and the question from the audience is, which one of these tools had the highest added value?
Well, thank you for the questions. I am not sure if I understand your questions correctly or not, but I can say that if it's a technical tool, then it's hard to pinpoint to which tool that it gives the highest value added. But actually, because sometimes in recycling, you need more than one tools, of course, and some materials can be recycled and but not economically feasible. On the other hand, some, of course, will have a high value added. So actually, what we're trying to do, of course, you think about it first, those wastes are waste. And of course, sometimes, not sometimes, most of the times in Thailand especially, we have to pay to get rid of those waste. But instead, now, if we recycle it in the right way, of course, instead of paying to get it disposed of, now you gain money out of it. So who wants to throw the money into the landfill, right? So in a matter of, if you ask me which tools has the highest value added, I couldn't pinpoint specifically to the specific tools, but this is just an idea. And for example, I'll give you one more example. Like, for example, when we recycle, we didn't need to recycle those materials back into its original form. Say metals and come back into the metals form. We can recycle into kinds of like their compounds and put into another types of industry. And sometimes it can even create a higher value added. And so again, it comes to research and developments and innovations. And that's my answer. I hope I answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have two questions that I'll take as one because I think they are for Mr. Libracert. One question is how you reuse and recycle concrete. That's a very interesting one. And another one related to your presentation on the Green Cartoon Program, why not to use reusable cartoons instead of recycling cardboards?
Okay, thank you. We have two questions, right? First is the concrete. The normal concrete, they have only 2 hours to work from the ready-mix concrete to set up to the concrete. So if you mix the ready-mix concrete, send to the customer. If the customer has some less ready-mix concrete, sometimes we take back and we make another product. Or we can mix with another to sell another type of concrete, maybe another stain. Because the concrete, they have I think more than 10,000 mixing formula. They have that one. And the second question about the green carton, I think it's good if you buy your product, you have the paper packaging, you can keep that one to use like another purpose, like that you keep your clothes, you keep for other things. But sometimes this paper box, you can use it forever. If this paper, you have some moisture, it means that is the loss of the function of the packaging. So after that, okay, how to do that one? It means return back and use as the recycle to make the paper. I can answer that like that. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. One more question to concretely to speak. It's for you, Stefan. Could you shed more light on your argument that the developing countries could easily procure the waste materials?
The potentials I had in my, I'm careful with the word easily. That is something which does not apply to almost anything in today's situation on circular economy. But it's also, I meant to make the argument for actually selling into the secondary raw material markets, but buying is essentially the same thing. Now, in a way. Now, we have the European Union and others, but let's say the European Union moving forward as a group of countries which has a very large interest on defining fast, reliable standards for secondary raw materials. There are some examples already for those around, and developing methods on how to measure and enforce. Fora like what we are offering in UNIDO allows developing countries to weigh in on this development of standards, so that they are standards which are actually, hopefully at least, commonly useful. And these standards are the basis for developing countries to either understand what they receive as secondary raw materials or have valued what they want to sell as secondary raw materials. Essentially, it's a market-making facility. Now, this will develop in the next years. I'm not saying it's easy. I should also say that a lot of the secondary raw materials will be involving a lot of, or at least a sizable amount of manual labor. Specializations are very unclear. It's very unclear to what degree specializations will happen in Europe, to which degree they will happen here in Asia or anywhere else on the world. This will, of course, determine then the trade flows and whether a country is a recipient or a sender of actually processed waste, which became a resource. Finally, something which I think will change in the next couple of years is, in particular, the Basel Convention on Transboundary Transport of Waste, and actually a lot of national legislations too. You have at the moment the situation that in the moment someone understands a product to be at the end of its life, it becomes waste. If it's waste, there are a number of restrictions for export, import, handling that are very difficult to overcome and that do not reflect the resource value that waste has. I would assume these things will be starting to be increasingly discussed in these conventions and will actually move along a little bit more, forming the basis for trade in the future.
Yes.
I just want to, because I really liked what you said, Stefan. I think the circular economy is, so the whole economic paradigm, industrial development, often in the last decades was perceived also as something from the West coming to the rest of the world, I believe. And in our discussions locally, we see it really very much as an empowerment agenda. People all over the world have the same problem at the moment. Our friends from China, Indonesia, the Dutch, the Americans, we have a problem with resources. It's equal to everybody. And I think that makes it such a nice level playing field. And that's why many people start to talk about, do we need a natural resource convention to actually put this into the international framework? And I think that will be an interesting conversation. So I totally agree with you. It is a true opportunity to take care of your own household. And I wanted to link it with one question, because it always comes up as well about technology, big data, AI, blockchain, all the very interesting things everybody's throwing around these days. And we started to experiment a bit, what does big data, for example, mean for a circular economy? And it's a very difficult question to answer, but we need to try to create some proof of concept. I want to share one idea we are currently having. If you look at a city consists of a lot of materials, rare materials, but also sand, as Stefan just explained before. And nobody at the moment sees a city and the materials that are used in the city as value. But when you look at a city, obviously it has a value. And we are discussing at the moment with banks, the banks in Europe, can you combine spatial data, so you look at a city, combined with material analysis that you could give you an idea how much is this city actually worth in terms of materials. This is interesting for the banks, because if you build a building or somebody builds a building, it still has a residual value at the end of the lifetime, because now urban mining is coming up and it's everybody's mouth. So how can you reuse the end of the material at the end of the lifetime? So we're starting to look at this with different data and analytical partners. If you have ideas, please share them. And I want to use that for a quick quick note, if you such questions we will elaborate on and discover in the first World Circular Economy Day, which is going to be an online event, a little bit like other days that you have seen around the world, but focus on circular economy. And so you just find it online on worldcirculareconomyday.org and become part of a global debate, because these are the questions that we need to shape together. Thank you.
So I would like to go through 2 more questions because I've seen them very interesting, and I'll put you, Ms. Femiano, on the spot now, because I have a question I think is quite relevant to the work of the EU, knowing also the work you do with the Switch Asia program that focuses on SMEs. So the question is how the message of circular economy could be taken to millions of micro enterprises across the developing countries.
Thank you for the question. So one of the ways that we do it is exactly through our Switch program. So we've been working for a decade or more on supporting examples in developing countries, and these the program has an Asia chapter, a Latin America chapter, an African chapter on basically providing small and medium enterprises, but also like small groups of producers with the opportunity of developing more sustainable businesses and providing not only a support to SDG 12, but also to other SDGs, which in the end would go also towards poverty alleviation. In Asia, we will be launching a new call actually very soon, but something that is very interesting is that there is a facility that collects all the experiences, and there is also exchange among these SMEs at a regional level, at a global level, to really understand how the challenges that you have in different parts of the countries can actually be overcome, and to learn from each other on how to overcome these challenges. And one last thing is that there is what we also provide now is a list of these businesses and how well they're doing, and how consumers in Europe and in the region can support these businesses and also get an idea of what it's out there. And this is very important for one of the points that I mentioned before, which is really consumers. So making the consumers more receptive to the idea of sustainable production, that will also conversely push for new regulations and for a response from the private sector, from industry, to produce better and more sustainably. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to give also the opportunity for a second round to Ms. Devanthi. Lakshmi, I've seen a question saying what could be the framework conditions and at which level to support circular economy. So given your government experience, what will be your reaction on this?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the questions. We know that when we are working with stakeholders, there are various types of stakeholders in different level of playing field. So we need to know to identify the stakeholders. We have stakeholders who really don't know the issues. So, and the frameworks need to be, or the intervention like education campaigns need to be there. And we also have another stakeholders who they know, but they simply could not afford to do so. So in this regard, framework of incentive, financial incentive, technology assistance, that kind of thing need to be provided by government or local government or other stakeholders. We also have a different type of stakeholders. They know it, they could afford, but they simply don't want to do it. So it's a lack of commitment, lack of compliance to the regulations. For those type of stakeholders, we need to have framework, a mixed framework. This not only incentive, but disincentive or negative incentive, like a law enforcement, monitoring and evaluation, strictly monitoring and evaluation. So that kind of things. That's why we need to deal with these challenges with various type of frameworks and interventions to be able to deal with any stakeholders at all levels. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lakshmi. So with this, I would like to conclude the panel. I don't want to conclude and give a kind of overall message myself, because it's going to be extremely unfair. The only thing that I would like to bring to this panel is that many of the solutions of the circular economy, many of the approaches of the circular economy, they have been seeded long time ago, when the Club Rome started, when the Rio conference started. And I would say that the more I go back and I read, for example, the Rio principles, including the polluter's paying principle, including the precautionary principle, the more I see how we should continue being inspired by these principles. So I want first to ask the audience to give a round of applause to our panelists for their contribution. And before I hand it to the MC, I think there's a coffee break coming, but it's not going to be a free coffee break, because you need to answer 2 questions before you leave this room. So I give it to the MC for the Slido questions and the conclusion.
For the Slido questions, actually, I think that would be Nilgun.
Okay, so you do them or I do them?
Oops.
Nilgun. Okay, so you go to the Slido and you see this question. What is the best regular instrument, policy or incentive to promote circular economy? You have resource taxing, award, public recognition, government subsidy, boosting consumer awareness. Choose your favorite one in the next 20 seconds. Okay, it seems that these are 2 questions. Now we go to 3. Okay, it's piling up. Take a couple of more seconds. I'm going to stop it exactly the time that I get what I like up there, I think. So, I think that's nice. You get a first answer. Can we have the second question? You can still choose your answer. So, what's the biggest challenge to scaling resource efficiency and cleaner production despite its clear business case? So, you see what you believe. Lack of knowledge, lack of regulations. It's very nice to see that lack of financing, it doesn't seem to be a main obstacle. I know a prime minister that 10 years ago it said to the country, money is not the problem. He lost his job after 2 years. But I think it's a good message that financing cannot be the big problem. So, thank you very much, and I give it to the MC.
Thank you very much, Stefanos, and all panelists for an excellent, moderated and spoken panel. This was extremely interesting. So, with that, we're pleased to announce that we will now break for coffee. The coffee break will be held outside here. Following the coffee break, we will be breaking into parallel sessions. They will be held in, 2 of them will be held 1 floor down in meeting rooms H and F. That is the greening SMEs and jobs will be in meeting room H, and the waste management in meeting room F. And the 3rd breakout on eco-industrial parks for green industry will be held in this conference room. And following those breakouts, we just want to remind you that this will be followed by the cocktail reception on the ground floor at 6 p.m. So thank you very much.
สิ่งสำคัญตายอยู่ในเด้อให้มีบทไหม
เดียวกัน
เอาได้เลย เราเช็ค one two ทดสอบ audio check 1 2 1 2 mic check 1 2
มันชอบแบบ
I still have a connection to the person who is preparing all the universities now to act in March. This is okay, it would be so cool. Because we're going to give materials. And the city program, if you then say, as an answer, we would love to do that activity, make the World Circular Economy Day, and then say, but think about it, how, if you could be involved or we could collaborate on the city thing. Because in the US, I haven't had much, to be honest. And that's what I'm saying. No, the cities actually, there are some mayors who want to do, but the concepts of economy doesn't yet.
I know exactly, but that's why I asked you usually. I asked you a week ago if you can use your own phone, and then it will be sure that the phone will be password free, and you said it was fine. Maybe you can talk to the bank and see if they can transfer the sign of the commercial bank is the bank here. I don't know whether it is. I usually
What about the water?
The water is clean, so we can just leave it.
Okay.
It's not enough for you.
Okay, you already need to have it.
Yeah, change it.
Just one more, yeah?
So cute.
ตรงนี้ถ้าหนูคาดแล้วอ่ะเขาโอเคเลย
ขวดไม่เต็มเราก็เลยไม่แน่ใจขนาดนั้น
น้อยมากมันไม่เป็นไรหรอกเขาบอกเมื่อกี้เขาบอกมันสะอาด
One is where can I go? What is this? Yes, I think 6 months. Yes. We have less than 1 hour. So 1 hour and a half. But you want to keep half hour for discussion. It means 1 hour 60 minutes. Yeah, it's almost 6 minutes. Because when we change between speakers, we can also use time. So 6 minutes. 1 minute. And you?
จริงๆมันมีสต็อกแต่ว่าเราไม่ได้ติดตามมันเหนื่อยมากๆก็ใส่ไปแล้วกันเนี่ยส่งสัญญาณได้ใช่ไหมแค่1 นาทีโมเดเลเตอร์จะเป็นคนดีเองสะดวกเลย
So we have the remote. This is the remote.
The point?
Yeah. Not the remote, especially.
Yeah, remote to control the presentation.
Yes. That's a good idea. But be careful with the slide. Why? Because it seems to be not working. Yes, I see some of that also. I don't point. If you want to point here, probably point to the computer. And so it can be disturbing the flow. It's not working here.
I think you would just have to moderate.
Let's ask me.
Is that okay?
has an LED screen with 7,000 So for vibrant, they are talking about promoting women entrepreneurship. There was like 7,000.
Pardon?
Timing
board? What is the timing board?
Gandhinagar, close to close to
Oh, sorry, I can't understand you.
I've been to one of the IT parks in Hyderabad.
Sorry, I still can't understand you.
I think we have 1 hour, which will make it 6 minutes.
If you give me 1 minute, I will find someone who may be able to help me. Once.
Now they've made 1,000 plants out of one. When I got from the German BMZ, I got that they are going to be Green Tech Awards. So I talked to the chief president and Gold Harvey and helped them give a application. So they got the award. May 13th in Munich. I didn't follow it up later. And they said they have 1,000 plants. So at least 50 people are employed in each one. That's good. Paper recycling, they only have 5. Actually, the challenge is paper. You have to make a good product. Paper has no value. You have to make a product. So that's the challenge. And the marketing of the product.
Very good senior college. India.
Maybe we can take a picture of the group. Okay. I think we can stand here in the middle.
Yeah.
We'll ask somebody to. Yes. Please. Yes.
What am I doing? Should I take the picture for you? Oh, sorry. Okay, I thought you meant to take the actual picture.
Yeah. But then we'll take it.
Yes, exactly. That's what I thought I was called for. Should I take the picture for you? This thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. It's done. So we have
No worries. If you guys need anything, oh, just in case while you're here, if you guys need anything. Here you go.
Yeah, this is my consulting company. I'm professor at the university in Switzerland, but I also have a company.
Thank you so much.
In industrial economy. Yes, yeah, I got it.
Who? Everything all sorted? You know everything now?
Yes, we will follow the order here in this booklet. This is the official one. Yeah. We start with Sonny Elfman, then it will be Paraguay, India, then Colombia, Carlos, then Rapul from South Africa is up. Then we have, is there the next our little picture? And then it will be Indonesia after South Africa. Yes, thank you. Then we have Thailand, and then we have the GIZ for the final. We are supposed to start now. Yeah, maybe please take a seat. Yes. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's just we feel comfortable and
We can take the just she wanted my boarding pass.
You just take a picture and send it. Yeah.
No, original. Because I bought my ticket myself. She said, okay, you can buy and send me the.
Yes.
Somebody's missing. Yeah. Audience is parallel session and drinking coffee.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We will start the parallel session on eco-industrial parks. Because we have a large room, I would kindly ask you if you can just come to the front. It will be easier for us to see you, and you can also see us. Please. So because of the sake of the time, we need to start now so we can have the chance to hear all the presentation and also get your questions. So first of all, my name is Ismail Al-Hilali. I am from UNIDO, head of the Division on Emergent Compliance Regimes. And today I'm glad to be here to moderate the session on eco-industrial parks. Basically, you have seen from the presentations that industrial parks are important for industrial development. We want to make it inclusive and sustainable industrial development, and that's why we would like to convert existing industrial parks to become eco-industrial parks, and also how we can help greenfield industrial parks to take into account the requirements of being eco-industrial parks. Just one word on the terminology. I think countries can adopt different terminologies. This is fine, as long as we agree on the achievements or the performance of these industrial parks. And basically, we have worked together with the World Bank Group, GIZ, and other international organizations, and we came to the conclusions that there are different criteria, but we need to show that in terms of the management of these industrial parks and the governance, we meet certain requirements, and also that we achieve environmental performance, economic performance, and social performance. And then it's up to each country to name it green industrial parks, circular economy parks, etc. This is up to the countries. So having said that, we know that the number of industrial parks in the world, there are different figures, but they are around 30,000 to 40,000. But also here we have the scale. The scale in Asia is different than the scale of or the size of the parks in Africa or in other part of the world. So we have to take it into account. But industrial parks are source of job creation, economic growth, and they are important for industrial development. And being an eco-industrial park should provide additional benefits. If we go by the concept in terms of environmental performance, economic performance, and social performance, this should go without saying. But we need to also to see what are the challenges in developing countries, because a lot of examples are already available in Europe, in US, in Japan, and other developing emerging economies, mainly China, India, South Korea, and others. But how we can learn from these experiences and adapt them to the context of developing countries. And without any further delay, I would like to introduce the panelists. And we have here a very good representation from Europe, from Asia, from Latin America, and also, and of course we are in Asia and Africa, of course. And because we are in Asia, we have a strong presentation here from Asia. And I think I will give the chance to the panelists to introduce themselves, so you can hear them first, and then we will start the presentations. So we start with Professor Erkman.
Thank you, Smile. First of all, warm thanks to the organizers for the invitation. So I am head of the Industrial Ecology Research Group at the University of Lausanne in Switzerland. So I've been working for many years on the issue of industrial symbiosis, industrial parks, eco-industrial parks, and industrial ecology in general. I will be focused very specifically on just a couple of points. So we have to take into account that we have two major trends, among a few others, but two absolutely major trends. So on one hand, as Smile just said, we have this development of industrial parks, many of them eco-industrial parks, at an absolutely massive scale at the level of the whole planet. We have a huge number of industrial parks because it is the privileged pattern of this industrialization process which is going on. And eco-industrial park is one way, obviously, to implement the greening of the economy, or more specifically, greening of industry. But at the same time, we have another major trend, which means that things are not remaining equal. So it's not that we are just greening an existing industrial system. The industrial system itself is changing constantly, evolving rapidly, and one easy term is just to call it Industry 4.0, but it covers a lot of different realities. Of course, digitalization is a major trend, but you have many other aspects within this greening of industry and the convergence with Industry 4.0, which needs us to realize that industrial parks, new type of industrial parks, even independently from the greening process, are emerging. Just as an example, because of the progressive shifting from fossil-based raw material to more bio-based material, we have biorefineries and different kind of biorefineries, which can be seen as a special kind of industrial parks, which are emerging in the years to come, and some of them already exist. Now, the very essence of the idea of an eco-industrial park, where the center of it is industrial symbiosis, not only, but it's certainly one of the key features. But the very basis is that all the gains in efficiency that can be done by individual companies through the very useful tool of resource efficiency, cleaner production, which are still very much needed. We should remind this. But you can go further if you act at the level of the system or a collective action. And that's precisely the idea of cascade of utilization through different companies who are active in totally different sector and were not used to talk to each other. And that's one of the main new thing with these symbiotic activities, is that you put into contact economic actors which didn't used to be in contact with each other, and then you have an additional possibility of increasing the efficiency of the global processes. So that's the essence of the EIP. Now, of course, we should not forget that, as Smile just reminded us, that the main purpose for industrial parks and EIPs is to attract investment, to create jobs, and to develop the economy, while, of course, protecting the environment. And attracting investment, also, there is something which is changing there. Because it's not just the traditional investment, finance is changing, as especially, that's why I have put here the example of this joint venture between UN Environment and the World Bank Group, greening the finance industry as well, which means, in particular, being careful about investment in fossil fuel, actually disinvesting from fossil fuel, encouraging investment in something which is not related directly to the fossil fuel, oil, coal, and natural gas. So this means that it has also some implications, crucial implication. And I just want to focus on one specific example where we could apply the idea of circular economy, typically at the level of industrial parks, for a key resource, which is, as you could imagine, CO2. Now, here there is a cognitive jump, if I may say, because we are used to consider CO2 as a waste, and it's fundamentally a cost. It is seen as a cost. It's something which is costing to the industry. Now, you can look at it from a totally different point of view, and that is typically the point of view of industrial ecology or circular economy, to look at it as a resource. You can do plenty of interesting things with CO2. You can do polymers, you can do chemicals, you can do fuels. So the idea is that instead of storing CO2 just as a waste in the atmosphere, where it creates the problem we know, we store it not underground, which maybe we could do, but which is very costly again, but we try to store it within the economy, where it can create value-added products. So you can have social utility and economic value while storing this carbon, not in the air, but precisely in products. So that's the whole idea of carbon capture and utilization or valorization. Now, if there is one place where we tend to have large amount of CO2, it's precisely industrial parks and eco-industrial parks. And you have not only large amounts of CO2, you have also very often big amounts of waste heat, and waste heat can be used to process the kind of product which you can make when you have CO2, for example. So just a couple of examples. This is a Swiss company called Climeworks. This is one of the approach is to have direct air capture. So you just take CO2 directly from the air. And then in that case, they just sell it to some greenhouse nearby. So instead of burning fossil methane as a fertilizer to enrich the greenhouse in CO2, they just take the CO2 from the air, concentrate it, and sell it to the nearby greenhouse. They inaugurated this Monday in Italy another plant similar to that, but then with this CO2, they do a fuel, they do methanation, and then from methanation, you can use this methane, which is one way to store electricity. So this is one way to do it, but you can also imagine something else. You can do methanol, and this is a pilot plant in Iceland. In that case, they use CO2 of volcanic origin underground, but it can be any kind of other source of CO2 from a steel plant, from a cement factory, or whatever. In that case, they do methanol, which then can be used also as a fuel. But it's not only about new processes, future processes. It's also interested for existing infrastructure, existing industrial investment, and that's typically the case of refineries. And it's not by chance that I'm giving the example of Reliance, which is the largest industrial group in India. They have one of the largest oil refineries in Gujarat, and they are now very much looking into changing the view they approach, changing the way they approach the CO2 issue, and looking at it now as a source of value-added molecule, because we know very well that all the efforts to diminish the emission of CO2 are not what they should be. So, of course, the priority remains to diminish the emission, but since we cannot really reach what we would like to do, then at least we should try to do our best. And of course, even if today the industrial use of CO2 is not high compared to the emission, the worldwide emissions are around 40 billion tons per year of CO2. The industrial use of CO2 today is 200 million tons per year. But this may change if we start pushing this kind of valorization of CO2. Nevertheless, it's small. But the big difference is that this can generate funds. This is a new revenue stream. And this is really a big difference. So I wonder if in this discussion about eco-industrial park and circular economy, the time now is not ready because of the constraint of the Paris Agreement on Climate to think of something which I could call global carbon wealth, tentative name, of a major initiative which could start from eco-industrial park to valorize CO2. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Suren Erkman. And your focus on one specific symbiosis related to carbon. When it comes to the climate change agenda, we used to hear about carbon emissions reduction and then carbon adaptation. And also, I think it's good also to get these inputs for the carbon capture and utilization, not only storage, and which makes also business sense for the business. I think, thank you for these insights. And without further delay, I will now pass on the floor to Dr. Bharat Jain from Gujarat Kinnar Production Center to provide us insights on the experience of Gujarat and India in general on eco-industrial parks.
Thank you, Ismail, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. I come from Gujarat, which is a western. This is Carlos.
It's not
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, good.
Which is the western part of our country, India. And as you know, India is a small continent. Our state is a highly industrialized state, and we claim that we are #1 in India. So far, we have developed more than 200 industrial parks in the various parts of Gujarat. The mainly 10 which are shown here are for chemical and petrochemical industries, and therefore we have decided to retrofit our existing industrial estate into the eco-industrial park. I am thankful UNIDO for supporting us in 2 case studies which I am going to make present over here. We have taken 2 case studies, one already developed, that is Nandesari industrial area, having area about 200 hectares of land, and another is Dahej petrochemical and petroleum industrial region, which has the largest SIR, we call special investment region, having area more than 4,700 square kilometer. The 30% development has already been taken place there in Dahej. And our approach is we are working at micro level, at macro level, and industrial symbiosis for our eco-industrial estate. The micro level, I mean maximum implementation of RECP at industry level so that they can perform better, including their improvement of ETP. So not only RECP, but their effluent treatment technologies as well. At macro level, we are talking at estate level, at park level, where we are working on the improvement, upgradation of their common infrastructure facilities, like common effluent treatment plant, common hazardous waste disposal facilities, common incinerator. And not only that, the logistics support, the transportation, the roads, the green belt, stormwater drains, electricity, water supply. And third, that is industrial symbiosis, how best we can use the waste of one industry as a resource to the other industry. So far, both these estates, we have covered 2 industry at Nandesari and 28 industry, where we have studied in detail what we call RECP assessment. And based on our assessment, this is what the anticipated result, which is shown here, the reduction in CO2, because there is a change of fuel from the conventional to the renewable or natural gas. And then therefore there is a more than 1800 kilowatt hour unit electricity conservation. There is also saving in water and therefore there is a saving in wastewater also, followed by the raw material, and ultimately with the one-time investment, there is a calculated payback period of hardly 2 to 3 years of yearly saving. So these are what our anticipated, and since we have got industrial policy, there is a financial support from the government of Gujarat, we see that we are making now implementation plan that these industries as a pilot case study will also implement with the 30% of their investment will come from the government and the rest the industry individual they will bear this expenditure. Talking to the macro level, that is at the common infrastructure at Nandesari, we have designed a common boiler because there were individual boiler working very inefficiently. So the common boiler is already under taking place. There is a scheme of common infrastructure facilities fund from government. So 85% money is coming from the government and 15% the Industries Association, which is an SPV for the Nandesari Industries Association. They are coming up with the common boiler as per our suggestion. Next, we are also improving their spent acid management. You know, the maximum industries in Gujarat is a dye and dye pigments, all colors which you see, green, red, blue. Mostly the intermediates come from Gujarat and China. And there was a problem of spent acid. You know, they generate huge spent acid like H2SO4 or HCl as a waste stream. So now we are working on a common spent acid management. We are collecting acid from all these industries. And at one common level, we will be treating it with hydrated lime, which will convert into gypsum, which is a raw material for the cement industry. So this is what we are going to put up at Nandesari. At other side, we are also improving their efficiency and upgradation of common effluent treatment plant with forward and reverse osmosis so that the 15 MLD wastewater which is being treated can be back to utilized to the different industries. Both these projects is already under implementation, Smile. Then there is we are erecting a common facilities for contaminated drum. You know, the raw material for these products comes into the drum and which are contaminated. So now we are erecting one common facility at one place in Nandesari. So all contaminated drums from the industries can be collected, can be treated, and then it would be recycled back to the industries. We are also putting GPS on their tanker because they are getting effluent from the tanker for the common effluent treatment plant. So we can track the vehicle also. Yeah, I'm aware. We are also working on their municipal solid waste management, and there were no proper, because the estate was developed 30 years back. So we are improving their infrastructure like stormwater drains, composting. Then also at Dahej, we are talking of improvement of their rail service, the communication, and the roads network. And these are some logistics where we are converting rail into the broad gauge and more facilities to the commuters. Because you know, in industrial area, the maximum people commute from the surrounding area. So this is what it is at the coastal area. So we are also come out with the ferry service, which we saw last time between the nearby port, so that people can come within a short distance instead of just 300 kilometers, is converted into 30 kilometers. And we also suggested some public utilities which were missing in our estates, like food courts, then ATMs, the toilets, water ATM and all that. And this is also being implemented with our CIP scheme. We have got critical infrastructure facilities. And again here, 85% money will come from the government. In industry, the association have to raise 15%. So these are what we are solar signing, the improvement of their rainwater harvesting system at common level. Last but not least, and I claim that we are not able to do much, I was discussing the industrial symbiosis, but that is a problem. We are not able to really utilize the waste of one industry to the other industry, and therefore I am again looking support from Suren and Raghu Babu from GIZ if they can guide us more. We have inventorized the waste from each industry. We have got characteristics also, but we are not able to find out real user. And also in India, we have got Rule 9, which is the Hazardous Waste Management 2016, where we have to take approval with a very robust standard operating practice to convince authority that, yeah, this waste can be utilized like this. So this is how, I believe I have finished in 1 minute. Yeah. This is how we are doing in Gujarat. And I'm thankful that we are planning to retrofit our all 15 industrial estates into eco-industrial park. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bharat-Jain. And I know time is limited, but you have already presented the benefits at the individual companies in terms of RSCP options, the merit of the collective solutions. You have presented also examples of specific industrial symbiosis with the spent asset recovery, etc., and the common facilities. And what is important is the impact of an eco-industrial park on the infrastructure, the greening of the infrastructure with the railway, with the ferries, and also the common services. Thank you very much for that. But without any further delay, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Carlos Toro from Colombia. So we are moving from India to Colombia in Latin America to share with us the experience of the country in implementing eco-industrial parks.
Thank you, Ismail. I will present you today some of the pilot project of eco-industrial park in Colombia on behalf of the team that currently works in the project. We select 2 industrial parks in Colombia, one located in the north coast near the Caribbean Sea, and one located in the central of Colombia in Medellin, when the center is located. The one in the north have 33 medium-sized companies. Main of the companies are focused on metal, food, and beverage. And the companies in the industrial park in Medellin are more SMEs located near the city of Medellin, focused on textile, food, and beverage. These 2 companies, these 2 industrial parks have management focus or an area focused on environmental sustainability that tries to works mainly in waste and the water supply. So we made 5 workshops in each one of the industrial parks in environmental topics and industrial symbiosis, and invite all the companies that are in each one. Some of them come, some of the other. Right now is not a big topic, the sustainability, but it could be an opportunity that these companies that are committed start sharing their successful stories to these other ones that make something that these companies commit in sustainability right now. With these workshops and visits in each of the companies, we identified in the Barranquilla Industrial Park 16 opportunities for synergies, and in the one located in Medellin, we identified 6 opportunities of synergies. Then we make a prioritization of these opportunities. So in the one located in Barranquilla, there is an opportunity of low-hanging fruit about make a committee to join all the hazardous or special wastes together and make an arrangement with a cement plant that is near Barranquilla to co-process these special wastes. So this is an opportunity that is easy to commit and is a way to build trust between the companies in the industrial park. So this could be an opportunity to make the other opportunities feasible. And in the one in the Medellin Industrial Park, the opportunity selected was to reuse wastewater from a company that produces school supplies, like crayons and that toppings, to another company nearby that produce textiles, garments, and washing the jeans. Right now, the barrier is some regulations related to the reuse of wastewater in Colombia. This is still under development, so we need to overcome these regulations or identify how to make some lobby to overcome this. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Carlos. I think we have here an example of how we can introduce the concept of eco-industrial parks in existing industrial parks. The basics are, I mean, it's a must. We cannot just jump in to become an eco-industrial parks. It starts from capacity building, then you have to test, you trial, there are challenges, but then we learn how we can adapt the concept to the specificities of the country. So the next speaker is Mr. Ndivuho Rapulu from South Africa NCPC, and he will share with us the experience of South Africa. Thank you.
Good afternoon. 3 years ago, the Minister of Trade and Industry decided that we need to revive about 5,000 government-owned industrial parks in the country. And he wanted an opportunity to do this in line with the National Development Plan, which encompasses the Sustainable Development Goals. And one of the questions I was asked was, can cleaner production help in any way? And part of exploring that question is what I thought I should present what we have done or what we have gone through. And we decided to start by just defining what is eco-industrial park to us and in terms of the work that we are expected to start doing. And luckily, with UNIDO, we were able to integrate with what they've been doing and what they've done to make sure that we use at least a globally acceptable definition, and also the work we are doing can be measured and verified from a quality point of view. Now, we have 2 pilot work that we did, and that was within 3 parks, and we chose the 3 because they literally resemble majority of the 5,000 parks that we are working on. The one is in the coast, or 2 of them are in the coast, but 2 different climatic environment or conditions and social conditions of the 2 parks. The one park is in the city, in the center of the country, inland, and also have a different environment and setup of all the 3. What we were instructed to do was to look at the environmental protection priorities of the country, to look at the employment condition and opportunities that could arise from the work that these parks are going to experience or we're going to do in the parks. Number 3 is to make sure that the livelihoods of the community and the employees in the parks are improved by the work that we are going to do. And we were told economically, we should either grow, sustain, or create new opportunities for economic development in the country. And we should bring in this process both public and private sector, either through partnership or collaboration, for the purpose of making sure that all stakeholders involved not only buys into the process, but understand the value of a sustainable project or a sustainable industrial park next door. Now, if you need to understand that better, of the 5,000 parks, 2,000 of those are predominantly found in so-called township or black residential area, if you know the history of South Africa. And when the 1994-95 Mandela comes in and we have a new government which integrates all the people of South Africa, a lot of companies found an opportunity to then relocate from a so-called black-only area to a multi-diverse community, so they can access to new markets. They can also access to better incentive schemes in those parks. And also it was an opportunity for industry to start through natural company buying another. They merged and become one. Some of these companies, you had one company with 4 different plants in 4 different parks to suit the different customers and national government policy and regulation about diversity and about black and whites in the country. So it was critical that the public and the private becomes part of the process. Now, an eco-industrial park that operates outside the boundaries and the borders of its locality has a most likely risk of collapsing and dying because it does not integrate with the community it operates in. For example, we have an eco-industrial park that just died with about 3,000 companies, and we asked why. We found that 99% of their employees were buzzed in from 50 kilometers, 60 kilometers away every day to come and work there because they had not integrated it with the community. So that's why it was important to get the buy-in. We still want to have, I have not given statistical or financial value of the work because I want to first just see the verified figures of the process. But we found that we led to a huge reduction of raw material use in the parks, created opportunity for innovation and improved workers' health, increased quality of life for the community in terms of the education facilities in the area and the medical or health facilities in the area improved drastically because of the attention now provided. The parks became part of the community. We also found that with the involvement of UNIDO, the one simple task in most of this park was just simply to replant a tree or to make sure that your drainage system works. So you did not need an expensive technology or process to be implemented. You just needed to do proper maintenance of the systems in the park, but you also needed to have a better management of the facility in terms of asset management, in terms of infrastructure development, and then the improvement could start being visible. So we used this as an opportunity for us to improve the economic viability of the community, but also to improve opportunity for employment and new opportunities for skills development. A number of these parks now have technical training facilities in them and around them, which allows for us to start developing skills that are required for the sustainability of the parks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ndivyo, for providing the insights about the South Africa experience and also the focus on the import and the interaction of the industrial park with the community. I think this is common in all countries, and we need to take it into account when it comes to the social performance of the industrial park. Now we are moving back to Asia, and I will ask Mr. Antara to give us insights about the experience of Indonesia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And also I want to say thank you to organizer, UNIDO and UN Escape, and of course the government of the Thailand, especially for the Ministry of Industry, and also our colleague invited speaker, ladies and gentlemen. It's very great pleasure for me from Indonesia can give the speech in here just to share the information what's already done by the government of Indonesia in terms of the industrial park. We give the title of our PowerPoint Green Industry Policy Implementation in Indonesia because whatever we talk and then we talk about the eco-industrial park, the one thing supposed to be pay attention is tenant. Tenant is industry in this case. So why to make the industry, existing industry, greening existing industry to become very important thing. Ladies and gentlemen, in this case, I just want to give the information that existing industry in Indonesia right now is very keen to involve in the Green Industry Award, and also I will
give another, what we call it, an alternative, and then we give the scheme of the green industry certification in Indonesia. So the industry which is fulfilled to implemented the concept of green industry, and then they will certify by the certification body. So in this case, from time to time, the aim of the industry to follow the green industry certification and green industry word to become more and more. Okay. Requirement of green industry standard actually consists of technical requirement and then a management requirement. The technical requirement, yes, in connection with raw material and energy, water, something like that. And also in terms of the management requirement is a policy and a structure of organization and strategic plan, and also management of management review and so on, just in line with the ISO 9001 in their management system. Ladies and gentlemen, in this case, if we talk about the eco-industrial park, and then we talk about the time from time to time. Actually, in Indonesia, our government already built the industrial estate or industrial park start from 1970. And then we call it first generation. In first generation, this infrastructure is not integrated with another supporting infrastructure. And then about the environment, they don't care actually about the environment management. So from time to time, we improve the awareness of the management of the industrial estate. And the second generation, they start from 19 to become 89. Just in this case, infrastructure is partly integrated in other supporting infrastructures, just like what we call it, electricity, and then like water, and then another energy. So they start to care about their own environment, and then they start to care about how the waste, which is produced by the industry, they supposed to manage it nicely. And the third generation, in this case, the infrastructure is already fully integrated with another supporting infrastructure, and then they already care not just environment inside of the industrial park, but also they should care about the environment surrounding industrial parks. So in this case, just like a health, school, and then another leisure place, so they should be integrated together just to make that the surrounding environment, surrounding society, they have self-belonging. They feel that they are already integrated with the industrial park surrounding them. And then the last generation, this one is, I mean the eco-industrial park in Indonesia, but we are not cheap there, that direction, because this one is supposed to be start from the design. At the first design should be integrated design of the industrial park, and then they integrated of the fully integrated with the infrastructure, and then also they start to empowering the community surrounding them. That's why in Indonesia, from time to time, we improve the condition of the industrial park. So this one is concept of the industrial park, eco-industrial park actually, in terms of the economic, and then energy efficiency, resource efficiency, and then environment, and also community. So those 5 of them supposed to be implemented if we want to talk about the eco-industrial park in our region. Of course, this concept bring the industry to become more efficient, the more productivity, because at the end of the day, the aim of the eco-industrial park just to make the business sustain, and then the industrial activity to be sustained, and the raw material to be sustained. But in the other thing, the efficiency will be increased, and then productivity will be increased, so they have more competitiveness in the market. So I think that's the aim actually of the eco-industrial park in this case. So I think by this time we already conducted twice of the eco-industrial park award. So in 2013 and then 2015, the animo of the industry or management management of the industrial park to involve in the world increasing from time to time. That means, I think, we can gradually bring the society and then bring the eco-industrial park management to become aware with the environment, with the sustainability of their business, and of course, the competitiveness of the tenant. I think that's all I want to share with the audience. Thank you very much for your pay attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Antara, and providing us information about the evolution of industrial estates in Indonesia and the interest of Indonesia to go for eco-industrial estates, and also the award, the recognition award for industrial estates based on their performance. Thank you for that. Now we are moving, we are coming back to Thailand, because now I will give the floor to Dr. Bonyagij, who is the advisor to the CEO, United Analyst and Engineering Consultant, to give us information about the status of eco-industrial parks in Thailand. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have heard a lot this morning. The Ministry of Industry already talked about what we're doing. So I'd like to share what we have done. Okay. From this slide, the slide in the pictures, we would like to share with you our concept of eco-industrial town. We look at green factory, we looking eco-industrial zone, estate or park. We have to look at that because in Thailand we have separate laws to manage. The big one, industrial estate, small one, park or zone. Then we focus on eco-industrial town because we think, as you said, the park itself have to link with communities, after which we dream to have eco-city or eco-town later on. With that, I'd like to share with you what is the policy recommendation, policy support. We have cabinet resolution on this issue, with 3 of them, okay, since 2009. Ministry of Industry itself have set up the committee on its eco-industrial town promotion to draft the strategy and implement it and monitoring it, okay, since 2007. IEAT, as you know, IEAT has been supported by GTZ since 1999 about this concept, okay? Department of Industrial Works, who working with smaller industrial zone or park, have several programs to promote green factory, CSR, green industry, and so on. The most important one is the National Economic Development, Social Development Board has, in the development plan of the country, we focus 15 provinces that we have to deliver within this 5-year plan. Next slide. How do we do it? How do we ensure that the eco-industrial town is green? In 2010, we have the eco-industrial estate has developed the scheme. We have 5 aspects of management: physical, economy, environment, and social. This is the same thing that you said. How do we do landscape, infrastructure, that are physical, economy, how investment on local revenues that generate environment, compliance, and more than that, okay? Water, wastewater, air pollution, solid industrial waste, and so on, and safety. Social, we look at labor, and we look at the community engagement. That's for labor. But for management, we're looking at how can we promote in terms of monitoring, communication, and set up promote standard, ISO 14000, safety, and so on. So those are we have altogether 31 indicators. From the left-hand side, we can see that we have Eco Champion. Once they complete 31 indicators, that's a self-declaration, self-submit one. Eco Excellence, we have add 9 more in the new indicators, looking at how can we have a green logistics, social, creating social values, symbiosis, CSR. Eco world class, we look at eco efficiencies, eco school communities. So we have a tougher indicators. The number eco excellence, eco world class, we have a third-party certification scheme. At the moment, up to now, we have 33 industrial estates in Thailand. 12 one is state-owned. 22 one is joint venture with private sectors. At the moment, we have 23 eco champion. Only 4 eco-excellence so far, okay? That's our scheme. So that is our scheme. Next slide. This is the one that I mentioned to you that has been developed for smaller ones like eco-industrial zone, eco-park. So this one have more indicators because we have to look at the more smaller one. We have the same aspect. We have 5 aspects and issues, but we have 41 indicators. In this one, we have 5 levels to go. So number one, engagement, which means how do they have a plan and management, policy and plan. Level 2, we have enhancement, how we clean up not only the park, but also the city. We have to work, the city has to grow with the park, okay? Number 3 is how can we include resource efficiency. This ISO 14001, ISO 5001 eco-efficiency. So those are the levels. So at the moment, we have implement, as of now, we have implemented last 2 years, okay? As of last year, we have level 2, only 1 province, 1 state. And number 2, level 1, we have about, at the moment, 16 province, 16 zone in 13 provinces. However, in the plan in 2021, we hope that we can work with them to grow up to level 3. In 2021 and 2026, all of them reach level 5. So we have a definite plan how to promote working closely with them. How do we ensure about that? Okay, there's 2 things here. We looking, as you say, the policy is very important. The 20-year strategic plan of Thailand has focused on moving forward, clean and green security. Secondly, as mentioned this morning, that this industry mentioned that EEC, the new one, they already have this as a focus group, focused issue to work on. So any development in Thailand, in eco-industrial park will be the key issue to be implemented. So this is why I'd like to share with you at the moment what they're doing now and the result. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing the experience of Thailand. And actually, this is a good transition because you provided that in Thailand you have already a national scheme for eco-industrial estates and also for eco-industrial towns. And then the connection between industry-urban symbiosis, if I may say.
Just want to share with you, in the DRW eco-industrial town, in terms of scheme, we have to have independent in terms of auditing and approval. So they have to be transparent in that aspect too. Thank you.
Yes, and actually that is a good transition because 3 organizations, the World Bank Group, GIZ, and UNIDO, worked on these schemes. And we found out that there are different schemes all over the world. We looked at Europe, US, China, India, and South Korea, and other countries. And then we felt that there is a need not to come with a single standard, but at least to see what is the common ground of all these schemes. And they should be seen as minimum requirements. We put them now as an international framework for eco-industrial park, but then countries can adapt, add other indicators that could be important for the countries themselves. And with this transition, I would like to invite Mr. Nukala from GIZ India to present the work on the international framework for eco-industrial parks.
Yeah, thank you, Smile. I'm going to present about the strategy which we had. You want me to do this one first, or the framework? Okay, I can do this one first. I'll be doing the 2 presentations, one on the international framework that we developed jointly, GIZ, UNIDO, and the World Bank. So the discussion started somewhere around 2012, but more actively we started working from 2015. And in a very short time, by December 2017, we could all agree and come out with this framework. I have given the links. You can download this publication. Mainly the aim of this publication was to promote new industrial parks as eco-industrial parks
with international standards and benchmarks. As Smile had already explained, these are the minimum requirements that we brought in there after lots of discussions and consultations. And also to promote transformation of the existing industrial parks into eco-industrial parks. Because there has been always a question about what makes an eco-industrial park and where do we insert those parameters and benchmarks. And that's why it's very important for us. So the scope of this is, it can be applied for planning and designing new industrial parks. So you have these minimum requirements, you can check them up, make them the part of the TORs of your planners or architects who are designing the parks. You can use this also in scoping the retrofitting of the existing industrial parks, and also thirdly for assessing the performances. And below is a small rider. You have to customize them and adopt them for your own conditions in accordance with your local legal requirements. Now this picture shows you what does the framework contain. There are 4 main elements in this. The elements corresponding to the management structures, environmental performance, social performance, and economic performance. And you can see there are a set of parameters which are mentioned there. And at the bottom you see in a red line, the legal compliances are a must. So we do not compromise, we do not negotiate. Whatever the national laws, local laws apply, those have to be complied with. And beyond that, you have these performance indicators. And on the top, you see there is another arrow. You can go far beyond it. We are not saying you be here and be satisfied. You can go far beyond that. So how does it work, the parameters? There are prerequisites which are qualitatively described. So you can say whether you have it or you don't have it. Then you have the performance requirements, which are quantitatively defined for all these 4 criteria. And there is also a toolkit which you can use for assessing your performances. You can mail to UNIDO to get the toolkit. I'm sure it's going to be online very soon. You can also apply it. This is one example. So you will see, for example, the prerequisite, park management services. A distinct park management entity is existing in the park, yes or no? If it's yes, or it is no. It's just qualitative. But below you have then the performance indicator, that the 100% of the firms have residency contracts, for example. Then if it's not 100%, if it is only 50%, you can give the marking accordingly. So this is how there are 2 sets for each of the, this is not the exhaustive list, this is just an example. For economic performance, a very similar way, you will see there are prerequisites where you say yes or no, and you have performance indicators where you have a number assigned to this. According to that, you can give the values. So also same for environmental performance. So you can have a look at them later on. And we have also the EIP Practitioner's Handbook. There are 3 main elements in this handbook. Handbook is the second part of the framework. The handbook helps you in a step-by-step guide to help you to adopt this process of the framework. So the section 1 is talking about developing a national approach for eco-industrial parks. It helps you, it explains the steps that you can follow for your national level to get the framework in place. For example, you will have to do some testing, do some consultations, and get the adoption, which is very, very important at the national level. Second thing would be to implement the EIP framework in industrial parks. So it gives you step-by-step procedure. How can this be applied in any particular industrial park? And third one is more focusing on the industrial symbiosis, which has been also traditionally a method that has been deployed for many, many long years. This has not been left out. And you will see in the framework, there are parameters related to not only cleaner production, but also climate change issues, gender issues, social issues, climate change adaptation and mitigation issues, management structures. It covers many, many parameters. So I have also given the link down here, which you can use. It's not going forward. Can you please help with the slides? It's not moving. It's not moving. So please use these 2 books, the the international framework on eco-industrial parks and the handbook, and also the other tools that are available. And this will be extremely useful for you when you are planning new industrial parks, or when you are retrofitting the existing industrial parks, or you just want to take the performance assessment of an existing industrial park. Where do you stand? These are extremely useful. With that, I will take forward to the next presentation and show you how this was already done for India. In fact, we started this process even earlier before we joined hands with UNIDO and the World Bank. What we realized is, in the absence of standards and benchmarks, what we are now calling as framework, it was getting extremely difficult for planning the parks or for performance assessments or retrofitting. Because everyone does it in their own way, and everyone says ours is the best. And you don't have a benchmark for that. And this was extremely important for us to do this. So second important, so this is kind of a framework, because you will also have industrial parks which will complain, why should I do, others have not done, someone else has not even done. So the adoption of the sustainability standards or benchmarks or framework, however you call it, by the state agencies or the national agencies would be a very important step, because you will then be able to universally apply. And you can decide what are the minimum requirements, as we also did in the case of international framework. The second most important is there has to be a plan, because the plan enables you to make provisioning inside the industrial park. If you're talking about a waste management facility and you have not provided in the master plan, you have no space for that. You're talking about parking vehicles and there is no space, you do not park your vehicles there anymore because there is no space left. Then they start parking everywhere, inside and outside the parks. So these benchmarks help you beforehand from all the four fronts, economic, social, environmental, and management perspectives, what parameters should we include in master planning. So there is also at that stage customization process. Use the benchmarks, talk to your stakeholders, decide what you want to put in the park, and then ask your experts to prepare the master plans, providing for those aspects. Nevertheless, we do not leave out at the implementation stage the RECP or circular economy or industrial symbiosis or industrial ecology, the different terminologies we have been using at the company levels. Those become absolutely required, and they're also part of the benchmarks. Infrastructure provisioning is another very important thing. You might have made provisions in the master plan, but executing them is very important. And there you need to further detail out the business models, the modes of delivery of the infrastructure and services, and their operational aspects have to be all brought into. One other thing what we found is missing most of the time is the management. Now, if we say we would like to implement circular economy or cleaner production in the industrial estates, but have no overseeing management body in the parks, it gets very difficult to motivate the companies. Only if the state government or a national government or an international organization tells them it's good for you to do this, people are not coming forward. So if in these benchmarks we said, at least there must be 25% companies which start adopting it. So it becomes a performance indicator for the park and for the management body to oversee that. Here are some examples of the parameters. Each quality criteria, here we have actually given one additional quality criteria, infrastructure and service quality. In the international framework, this has been merged with the other parameters, but here we kept it extra because we were trying to highlight the issues of renewable energy systems and other technological advancements to give a focus there. There are number of criteria there, and there are also, like you will see in the economic quality, the investments, the revenues, the employment, and so on. Because many times we see when we design industrial parks, we are not even meeting the economic requirements. We are not seeing the state's interest of employment and investments. At the end, we are ending up with liabilities of pollution and resource exploitation. So it's very important for us to design the parks to achieve the economic interests, the social interests, which is very, very crucial. If you miss this in the planning stage, you only end up with liabilities and problems. Yeah. So these are the standards here. We have the framework now, but prior to that, we had used the German sustainability standards. And in the circle here, you can see in the flower, you can also do the assessment of how much you have achieved. And certification is the next step. We have not still reached there, but that would be next step. So in the planning, you have the systematic plan preparation. The next step will be development of design concepts. We found that people are very happy if you do the designing of the parameters. And even good is if you do 3D visualization and walkthroughs, your stakeholders will really enjoy and appreciate the plan. And they can actually see what you want to show them. And then the prioritization of measures for implementation. And that's how this goes on. This is just one example of one of the industrial parks where we have customized concepts for an information technology park and for a women entrepreneurs industrial park. So it gets very fascinating when you start actually converting that into implementation mode. And the management structures, here we have an example defined for India. How should a management body for an industrial park look like? What services should be performed? We can share, these documents are online, and you can have a look at them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nukala, for presenting first the international framework and also the experience of GIZ in India. I think, first I would like to thank the speakers for keeping the time. I think we started late, but we have catch up. And now I will open the floor for questions. I think I'd prefer that we go questions directly from you without using the infrastructure anyway. And also we would like to hear also from you. Please, if you have questions to the panelists, you can. Yeah, please, thank you.
Thank you, very interesting presentation. So the idea of industrial symbiosis.
Can you please introduce yourself first?
Sorry about that. My name is Arun Jacob. I work for SCAP Environment Division. The idea of industrial symbiosis is very fascinating, and what touched by Mr. Erkman in the presentation also was on industrial symbiosis. Very interesting concept theoretically, but when it came to the practical application of that in the Gujarat case, as we said, that is not really realized, this industrial symbiosis. How do we practically implement industrial symbiosis in eco parks, in terms of, especially in the parks which are already existing, especially in developing countries where you want to convert an existing park into eco-industrial park, and you want to implement some of these ideas and concepts of industrial symbiosis in reality there. What are some of the key practical challenges, and are there any examples of overcoming it? Thank you. Sorry.
I think South Africa will start, and then others are welcome.
I'll give two simple examples of what we did. In Epping, which is in Cape Town, we had a park where the one is a plastics manufacturer, there is a recycling facility, there is also a smelting plant next door, and a clinic, a medical facility next door. So what you do, you move steam from one facility to the other facility, and it's used as energy for that. We had in the one facility, they had too much water access from the municipality. So you cut off the one plant, the other plant depends on, so you share basic resources amongst each other. But the recycler was importing waste pallets from outside. We realized after that that he had enough pallets within the industrial park for him to start growing new business opportunities. He was now doing furniture. He's also now refurbishing pallets for the members of the industrial park. So there are basic benefits that you could get from the companies themselves sharing resources. So you're trying to develop a closed loop system where once resources go in, you try and get them to be used inside the park as much as possible before the waste is released from the park.
Yes, thank you. The question is very relevant because, yes, does it work? Okay, thank you for the question, which is quite relevant, because sometimes symbiosis can happen more or less spontaneously. That's the famous example of Kalundborg in Denmark. But we don't know if it is the most relevant symbiosis. Maybe they happen just because they know each other or for some, not very rational reason. So normally, most of the time, you need, and maybe that's the sense of your question, you need a procedure. And this is where the management structure is very crucial, because you have a whole procedure. And first, you have to ensure confidentiality, because you need to collect data, for example. And companies, they won't just like that release data about their flows and their stocks or their process. So you need to build trust. So you have two aspects. One aspect is technical. Of course, you need some very technical realities at some point when you want to implement symbiosis. But upstream, you need to build a whole process. Now, my experience for quite a few years active in this field is that also quite often you don't necessarily end up with the symbiosis you were hoping for in the beginning, but the simple process by which you start this dynamic of having a lot of stakeholders who usually ignore each other now start to talk to each other may generate a number of quite interesting ideas. And in a sense, it's one form to think about the development of an area or even of a region. Even if it does not always reach exactly the symbiosis that you want. But in the tools that Raghu has just mentioned that have been developed especially by UNIDO, you will find a lot of details about how to go about it, but what is true is that you need a certain procedure. And it has to be adapted to the local context. That's very crucial.
I think the system now works. I have other questions. And actually there is one which is interesting for Dr. Barajain. Any lessons learned in promoting EIP development regarding incentive scheme to developers and tenants, financial tax incentives versus mandatory requirements?
Yeah, let me also answer your question. In particularly Gujarat, we have so many chemical industries, and we have provided 8 common places for hazardous waste disposal site as a secure landfill site. But well, there is a problem of land, availability of land, and cost of land. So that, under that complexion, we started using the waste. One example I have given, the spent acid. Earlier that gypsum was a waste, but we realized that it is a raw material for cement industry. So it is being sent to the cement industry. Second example is our waste paper recycle industries which we have in Gujarat. The plastic waste which we get from the European countries, the laminated plastic. For some time it was hazardous waste, for some time it is not hazardous waste. So there was the problem of disposal of that waste in a landfill site. So knowing the CV, the calorific value of more than 3,000, we realized that it is a good fuel as a co-processing for cement industries. Similar example of iron sludge, the fly ash in the brick manufacturing. But we have problem of to get the solution of waste. So we have erected at 3 industrial parks the waste exchange bank, where we have display of different industries waste and characteristics. And therefore I'm asking expert where the waste even can be utilized. Now coming to the Ismail, yeah, we realize that EIP is the next phase of our industrial for retrofitting and also for the new industrial park. There is a policy, at least from the government of Gujarat, there is a component for the assessment. About $1 million comes for the assessment, where we, institution like ours, involved with the help of GIZ or UNIDO, how best we can retrofit or plan new. And there is also a component for the implementation. As I said, that at industry level, there is a 35% of money will come from the state government for the implementation of all RECP. Then for the common infrastructure, 85% will come from the government, and 15% have to raise from the beneficiaries. That is, we have got industries association for each industrial park. So they have to raise 15% for augment their water supply, drainage, infrastructure, common effluent treatment plant, and all common facilities. And for Waste Exchange Bank also, we are planning to have our industrial policy. Maybe the next Vibrant Gujarat 2019 January, we'll have a policy for how more we can develop waste section and a sort of networking or industrial ecology.
Thank you very much. I give the floor to, yes, please. You can.
Okay. Thank you for giving this chance, and thanks for all speakers also. My question is, in different countries...
Can you please introduce yourself first?
My name is Gabriel Mikael from Ethiopia, Minister of Industry. I am Director of the Environment, Climate Change and Industrial Development. It seems in different countries there's different names. It's called eco-industrial parks, eco-industrial estate, and eco-industrial town. Is there any international standard for both common issue? This is my question. Thank you.
We had 2 years of discussion between GIZ, promoting sustainable industrial areas, the World Bank Group promoting low carbon industrial zones, and UNIDO promoting eco-industrial parks. Even within the house, we have different names. And actually, we came to the conclusion, let's focus on the content. And I think the objective is the same. And then it's up to the countries to name it as per their, culture. In Asia, we are talking more about green industrial estates. You can also call it a green industrial park, etc. It's up to the countries. What we agreed on, that we need to agree on what are the must elements to be there. Elements that must be in the scheme, and what are the minimum requirements. And this scheme should be open to continuous improvements, because other countries would like to focus on social aspects, other maybe more on environmental aspects. It's up to them. So it's difficult to say that we can standardize. We have different names, and it will stay like this, I think. Yes, please.
Can I share on that? Very interesting question, because when I show my slides, remember, we have green industry, and we have eco park and eco-industrial town. In Thai context, I think we ran into the same situation. It depends on your country. If you would like the park go hands in hands with the city, that's why we call eco-industrial town. And you know who runs it? The governor, not Ministry of Industry now. The governor, who runs the city. But the city has a very condensed area on industry. That's why we have very specific. I have 15 provinces, but I have 18 sites. So the site has something to do with that. So it depends on, but the idea is how to make it green, to make the park green, and the community. It depends on your, I think, structure of your country. How do you see that? I think, but the whole idea is that they have to have coexist between industry park and community. But whatever you call them, that's why the indicator is quite important. I'd like to share with you with that, because this is where, how do you like to do the industry to grow with the community? I don't know what you call it, but we decided to call eco-industrial town. That's all. I'd like to share with that. Yeah.
Thank you. You can see the context of Thailand. We have heard also about the context of China last session, and also we have heard from countries here. I think Ethiopia can choose its system. Yes. Please, Rafat.
Rafat Asi from Clean Production in Jordan. Thank you for all the speakers, and thank you for giving the chance to use our voices compared to this application on the mobile.
Use both.
Yes. My question is, a prerequisite to apply eco-innovation, eco-industrial parks is to have the commitment of the government and the body who run the industrial parks. So we, developing countries at different levels in awareness and knowledge about these eco-industrial parks and their requirements and their benefits. So what can be done to work on that aspect? And my second little question is this principle applicable to any type and size of industrial gatherings? Because some industrial parks or gatherings are the same type of industry. It is difficult to exchange waste and to work on that, a little bit complicated. Thank you.
I will start from the second question. If you have one type of industry, in principle they should have the same type of problems. Then you can see a common solution. And the common solution or a collective solution for these industries is one type of symbiosis. Because symbiosis is not limited only to the waste of one company to become a resource of another company. It can be a common facility, a common solution for the inputs, energy, water, materials. And if these companies are using the same raw materials or similar raw materials, there is a room for optimization there. Same with the outputs in terms of products, logistics, or waste. If they have same type of waste, or at least similar type of waste, we can think about a common solution. Regarding the first question, what is really important, we cannot only rely on international cooperation to promote eco-industrial park. We can pilot it in some countries, but it's not enough. We need to upscale it at the country level, and here we need to work with national governments. There is a need to have a national program in the country. But at least with the pilot of the international cooperation, you can raise awareness, you can showcase other countries how they did it, you can share experiences, but there is a need to develop a national program at the country level. And we have the example of Indonesia, Thailand, South Africa, Colombia now is also going that direction, and India, where when we have international cooperation going along with the national program, then you can expect a bigger impact. I will go first to one question here. I think there was one question with regard of carbon captures and utilization, if there is life cycle assessment to use.
Okay. Yeah, it's a pretty new field, but yes, there is now some work. Especially I'm aware of some research done in Europe now on assessing the total assessment of CCU, which can be different depending on what you do with your carbon, if you do chemical products, or if you do some, for example, building material. But so you have different options. But in any case, what is crucial is what is the source of energy, especially electricity, which you will use in your process to either extract the CO2 from a concentrated source or directly from the air, and the source of the energy which you will use then in the downstream process. So this also, of course, has a very strong impact. And the general answer is that as much as possible, it should be electricity or energy from a renewable source. But a number of studies now are underway on the specific different pathway to assess the various environmental performance of valorizing CO2.
I'm Ali Abu Sinna. I'm the director of the Egypt National Cleanup Production Center. I don't have a question, just a comment to share with you our experience. So basically, we see that the main challenge for the eco-industrial park to develop the business case. So for example, for the industrial symbiosis, I heard a lot about how it is going to be implemented, how it could be beneficial. So I would say our experience for promoting the industrial symbiosis in one of our projects based on the fact that we have three challenges. We don't know what type of wastes that we have in the industrial parks. There is no any practical surveys showing what type of waste, where it's come from, how can I use it, what type of technologies. So we started actually with identifying what is existing in the industrial park to be showcased for all the industries. This was very important because normally in Europe you have something called the waste catalog. This is maybe in the developing countries, most of them, they don't have such type of codes or waste catalogs. Second issue, that you need to have this promoted for, and you have to have a raising awareness for all the industries. So we started to do this type of facilitation model, bring the industries together. Everyone is just coming like going for auction and try to show that they have this type of waste. So we overcome the problems that there is no awareness about this type, and they start doing this matchmaking very easily. The last thing, that we are speaking about the industrial park, but we try to go beyond this, the existing industrial park, to go for other industrial park, to increase the business. So this is why we had a platform for exchange this waste. So they encouraged other industrial park to work together, and by this you build the business case. So this is just wanted to show that, as Ismail mentioned, you have to think on innovative ways for localizing the model. Don't look for the German one or for the Indian one or whatever. There is a specific direction, there is specific different regulations. So this is our experience for us, how you minimize and the risk and start such activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ali. In fact, domestication of the concept is very important. And this should be done in a multi-stakeholder approach in the country. We have 1 minute. I will just give the floor to the speakers to provide one key message, but please make it short so we can be on time for the reception. We start from Rapulo.
Okay, thank you. There's a question there which is addressed to me. By the way, there is no concept that would survive in this era we are living in if it does not integrate women and young people in it. So the UN has a program now for everything we do with the UN. You have to measure your gender output, the involvement of women and the involvement of young people. So I'm answering the question there. The next thing is that the amount of work that we've done in the last 3 years in the Eco-Industrial Park, when we measure and verify the output, we realize you could electrify and keep the lights burning of 100,000 population residential area for 365 days a year. That's verified. So financially, that's in rands, South African rands. It's almost a 1.5 billion rand investment that could come out. So Eco-Industrial Park can become a new economic stimuli.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bonya-Gich, please.
Thank you.
One key message.
Yeah. Okay, I think, short one. I think for us, I think eco-industrial zone estate is in Thailand is not a problem. What we are trying to do is to promote eco-industrial town, which is we are working on, but we still in the beginning. But I think this is the message that so we would like the eco-industrial estate or park growing with communities. That our approach so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Antara.
Thank you. I think at this moment, Eco-Industrial Park is not a single concept and not a single criteria, but at least we talk here together and then input from the audience, and then one to each other country have their own experience, but at least we can change our experience, and then one country probably they want to improve the industrial park right now, step by step, to go to further to the eco-industrial park. But at least this concept could be implemented step by step. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nukala.
Yeah. Thank you for the good questions. I can see that there is a lot of interest on the topic. First message, how you call it is not very important. What you are doing inside this is important. I think that's a very clear message. You call it eco-industrial parks or sustainable industrial areas or green industrial parks, however you call it. First message. Second message, looking at the question about how do I start for retrofitting existing parks? We have explained this in our the handbook very clearly. Please go through this. We have given you step-by-steps how to go about applying it for your parks. Third, small comment on the social part. Someone asked about gender equity. We had discussed a lot while developing the international framework. Initially, for example, in India, we found that industrial parks have employment of women ranging from 3% to 10%, whereas the government thinks there should be 25%. But we found that a lot of women don't go there because there is no provisioning in the parks fit for them. For example, safety, security, transport arrangements, facilities for the infant children, many other things. So you will see that in the international framework, though we didn't use the term exactly gender equity or women employment percentage. In the text notes, you will see the terms gender equity, and you will also see that we had provided for infrastructure and services that will promote women in the parks. Thank you.
Thank you. I think when industrial park start becoming or adapting the concept of eco-industrial park, there is a big opportunity for the small companies located in the industrial parks to link or to make a commitment with the big companies located over there to share successful stories and to know the lessons learned with the big ones. Because when they are not in the industrial zones, they don't have this interchange.
Thank you. Dr. Banerjee.
Yeah, thank you. India is a country with a huge population, and we are growing, we are developing, so we need industries. So through RECP and through EIP, what we are trying to achieve a very sensitive balance between economy and ecology, because neither we can afford to lose ecology, at the same time we need strong economy. So these are the tools, as I believe, that we can have a sustainable industrial development to maintain a very sensitive balance between ecology and economy. So for women entrepreneurs, yeah, in Gujarat we are developing 3 estates, industrial park only for women entrepreneurs, which will be managed by women, and all cottage and other industries will be run by women itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Erkman.
Thank you. So it makes a lot of sense to focus on industrial parks and industrial symbiosis because this is just where things are happening. That's the basis, the backbone of our economic system. But it's not an end in itself. We should look at this approach of eco-industrial parks, industrial symbiosis, as one specific tool to implement more globally balanced, integrative, and sustainable development as a form of sustainable development, generally speaking, but you have to start somewhere in concrete terms, and that's a good way to address it.
Thank you very much, the speakers, and also thank you very much for the audience, for your interest, your patience. I think we are 6 minutes behind the schedule, but I think it's okay. And now I give the floor to the organizers.
Thank you very much. So we're pleased to announce that there will now be a cocktail reception on the ground floor to celebrate 50 years of Thailand-UNIDO cooperation. It's hosted by the Ministry of Industry of Thailand, and the Deputy Minister of Industry will be there, and along with the Director General of UNIDO and the Ambassador of Austria to Thailand. There will be Thai classical dance followed by food and amusements. So please make your way down to the ground floor as quickly as possible before 6:15. And then just to remind that tomorrow we will reconvene in this room at 9 o'clock. See you then. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing your experience. Thank you very much for the short notice also. Thank you. Yeah, photo? It's
a good work. Nice to meet you. Okay.
How is the situation?
Let's be in touch. Yeah. About that.
It's improving, no? Yes. Hello? Hello?